climate mitigation to climate neutral to climate positive to now net zero. We've seen those goalposts really evolving as our understanding evolves. So I think it's better. Pratik, Kitty, both of your questions I can take at once and then respond.
Yes, hi, Vivek. Thank you
Hi.
so much. Thank you so much for these deep insights about ESG. I was just going through BCG's strategy, three-step net zero strategy of reduce, remove, and engage. I just wanted to understand a bit like the big industries like industry, Adani or Reliance, how they are going towards net zero strategy because it needs a lot of capital investment as well to move their current strategy to net zero. So can you just give your some of the insights?
Sure, I will. I will. Thanks,
Thank
Kitty. Pratik, can I take your question as well together?
Yeah, like as Kitty asked for big organizations, I wanted to know about how can small organizations with low capital work towards protecting the environment and not hampering their profits.
Lovely, lovely. I'm super excited. Love these conversations, love these questions, and the large organizations, even though they've been legacy organizations in terms of their assets, historical, way of working things and stuff, they have all been investing significantly in the climate space. So, you spoke about the Adani Group, the Reliance, every one of them is investing heavily into renewables, into green hydrogen, into looking at optimal climate focused businesses, whether it's data, whether it's taking it online digital, whether it's looking at greener fuels, whether it's, a bulk of the plastics business is now looking at bio based ones as well. So large companies have resources, have the technology, have the collaborations, have the partnerships, and are taking goals, and they're also following this up with investment commitments. Now, to the question of MSMEs, they do not have the resources, they do not have the funding, they do not have the understanding, knowledge, and awareness. So what is happening with MSMEs is that a number of philanthropic organizations, civil society organizations are coming together, and they are able to bring different MSMEs in a cluster together, engage with them better, and aggregate demand. So while a large company would, Mahindra, for example, would place an order for 600 efficient, energy efficient motors, a single MSME will be able to place for just two. Now imagine the buying power of a Mahindra versus a small MSME, right? Who will get that motor at a cheaper cost? But if an energy efficiency service is limited, a Ministry of Power has come in with a national motor replacement program where 450 small factories come in and aggregate demand. They are placing an order of 1,200 motors, and they are able to reduce the cost down and still have that transition in place, which is energy efficient, which is low carbon. So there are models which are working out either through voluntary collaboration between industry associations for MSMEs or through government partnerships. And that really is very exciting. India is in fact leading the way. We've got to replicate and Sumit probably knows this better, the Ujala scheme with Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and how India had the world's largest replacement of light bulbs and make them more efficient. This is happening with all the other industrial technologies as well. So that's a quick reflex response to your pointers.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vivek.
So this is the heart, right? This was what I was supposed to talk about. I know, keeping in view of the time, I'll try and skim through some of this. But you see, baselining itself is a very complex topic. You don't probably have enough data. You can have enough data and inputs within your physical boundaries. But how do you do this with your suppliers? How do you really do this with the product use that you're looking at? And therefore, there is a need for more intelligent tech-based solutions. Of course, sustainability is an advantage. Largely, this is a busy slide, but largely there is digital engraved into each and every step here, whether it's your day-to-day business operations, whether it's your supply chain, whether it's your consumer engagement and stuff. But what I'd love for all of you to look at is this framework that we've been using on using AI to combat climate change. So I was talking about measurement, right? So when you measure, data is very, very important. How do you really estimate where is your footprint? What is it for your particular product? How do you really look at, so if I'm making a jeans and if I'm buying, a cotton from someplace, dye from someplace, buttons and something from the other location, I only know how I can map emissions from the production process that I am in, but not with the input material. And then if I'm selling it to, say, 5 million consumers globally, how each one of them is using it, right? Somebody might use it for 80 wash cycles, somebody might use it for 120. How do I really measure the impact? So that's a very important place for AI to come in. There is obviously more of the mitigation solutions that AI is increasingly being used. There is always a forecasting about the demand of energy that's coming in. A lot of us probably use smart ACs, smart refrigerators, smart, appliances in our house. Does any one of you get an app where you can really track your energy consumption? There are a lot of smart meters and smart appliances that are being used. Today, for example, the air conditioner that I use in my house, I can track its energy consumption on my phone, and it prompts me to see whether I should use it for a lesser time, whether I'm doing it right, whether I need to clean my filters, and just look at this from my behavior of my regular operating stuff. Sensor-based lights, right? This is again where it just automatically gets switched off if you're not in the room and stuff. So all of these tech-based solutions are really helping drive solutions. The appliances, the lights are more of us for domestic use, but for business, this has become a very, very important part. The way a airline operates is everyday flights from a Delhi to Mumbai, and the fuel it consumes is also driven by AI, and they are able to really determine the wind patterns are like this. Do not press on the gas too much. You will be able to do single taxi landing and stuff. So there is a lot of information there. Uh, AI and tech is also being used to do a lot of spatial mapping, where you are able to do forecasting and you are able to engage more on how much of water risk is there, how much of flooding risk is there, how much of encroachment I'm having on the forest side and stuff. So there is this entire framework. Dilpreet, I see your hand up if you have a question related here, and Manish too.
Hi, Vivek. Thank you for this insightful session. My question is not related to this, though. However, I was going through the leadership declaration of this year's G20 summit, which happened in Indonesia.
Right.
One of the declarations was that, and I just wanted to understand your views on this, protect macroeconomic and financial stability and remain committed to using all available tools to mitigate downside risks, noting the steps taken since the global financial crisis to strengthen financial resilience and promote sustainable finance and capital flows. So I just wanted to understand your view on this, because this is one of the leadership declarations that talks about, sustainability. So what's your take on this?
So this important declaration talks about mainstreaming finance into all the sustainable, aspects, and all countries have agreed that they want to make sure that there is no credit risk or financial risk associated with, all the environmental aspects, and how we can kind of streamline this, bring in a more stable environment, whether it's through climate or through the people social disruptions that we are seeing and stuff. And tools like this are really helping out here to really plan and understand cash flows and understand where things are. So that's a quick opinion. I think it's a welcome declaration. It brings in more commitment, more stability, and make sure that it puts the money where the talk is, and it's not just talk, but the investments are flowing in that direction too. Manish, quickly, your question before I round up my session. I know I'm just almost at time, so I also want to share a few tools which we've been using so that you can then go on and research.
Yeah. Thanks, Vivek, for that, for taking out the time for my question. Just a quick thought. I obviously tech and AI is going to play a big role in the future. But I'd like to understand how I believe that it's going to be a big challenge for smaller companies to use the tech and AI. One in terms of the exposure, maybe the other in terms of because of cost perspectives. So how do we, as a entire community, overcome that challenge? One, I see, obviously scaling up, more the people use, things can come down. But what else do you think, in your opinion, can we use as a strategy to help these companies as well commit to these goals?
Manish, I think again, very critical question. Everything that we ask is how do we make it more affordable? How do we make it more accessible? And the beauty of AI, the beauty of tech is it becomes far more cheaper to do these kind of assessments and incorporate the tools and look at the diagnostics and look at what kind of solutions it would take place. So these are all like quick and dirty analysis that you could do with your strategy. You could look at other performances. You could incorporate this for smaller businesses at a far lesser cost, understand what the design choices are. And then this is one of the tool that we use, which we have a proprietary BCG tool called CO2 AI, where we help even the smaller companies to measure, decide, reduce, and collaborate. And this collaborate part really helps small companies and large organization value chains to also incorporate some of these mechanisms. And I'll tell you how this works, right? Uh, there is always this going to be a what if kind of an analysis. What are the scenarios? How do you build in the roadmaps? How do you track things and stuff? But this chart, if you look at it, a large spirits company, a beverage manufacturer, wanted to map out impact from the glass bottles that is been using. And the historical way of doing things is on the top, the traditional approach. So you identify the amount of glass which is being used. You identify the best average emission factor that's been done based on past work and research, and you would just multiply it and get your emissions impact. But when you do a CO2 AI powered approach, you're able to break this down into different components. And this is where your smaller companies also come in. So your bottle suppliers, if they are supplying to you, say a different colored bottle, an amber versus a green, they are able to determine what kind of recycled content is going into it, whether it's 50%, whether it's zero, how is that being manufactured within the smaller organization. So an SME who is using coal-fired boilers versus a little bigger company who's using an electric boiler, how this would work, and the way this is being transported, it gives you real-world emissions and it gives you real-world abatement levers and reduction pathways. So with this, you are able to have larger companies collaborate with the smaller ones and engage better. Of course, some of this are more for complex organizations and bigger organizations. So you map it across your value chains. You understand what kind of circularity that goes into it, where you are in terms of your design, in terms of your collection, end of life and stuff. So all of these pointers come in from past experience, history, AI, using all kinds of data and analytics. Now, there are additional tools being used by multiple other organizations. This is one I'm putting it out from my previous organization, WRI, which also tells you if you're a small organization in a part central of Madhya Pradesh, imagine the kind of air temperature risks you're having. Imagine the kind of cooling needs you will have with the ambient temperature going across different time intervals during the day. Or if you look at the number of rainy days and what kind of disposal water discharge mechanisms you would have and stuff, right? This kind of information gives you a lot more to think about, where your power plant should be located, whether you should be doing air cooling or water cooling, what kind of extreme weather events you should be protected at, what global commodity supply chains are at risk. So whether a small organization could start moving out from some of this or thinking towards investing into more or collaborating within the organization. So there is a coffee association, there is a collaborative who kind of work things out. So largely it's a tool which is helping manage complex issues. It helps you build more capacity, whether you're a large organization or a small, to gather, complete, interpret data sets. A lot of data is available, but what people say, all that shines is not gold, and all that is gold will not shine either. So how do you really identify the right data, right insights, and right inputs to really look at solving the crisis? And also, I see this as a very engaged group here. So there is a call for solutions. So, if you're an entrepreneur or a budding, have a project idea, or if you know people who are working in this space, there is something that you could look out for and get some more support on. But I will probably pause here and look out for more questions, or try and round up and close this because we are just at time. But largely this is a solution. This is a solution which is helping address all kinds of complexities that we did not have resources to deal with before.
Thank you. Thank you.
Adeeb, you were having one question. Maybe you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Sumit. So hi, Vivek.
Hi.
We are glad to have you with us today. And thank you for being a part of Fulcrum 2.0. So it has been a really interesting conversation as of now. So my question is on COP27. So the event just got closed today after 2 days delay. So it
Yeah.
had to be closed on 18, but because
Yeah.
of
That's quite normal for all cops, so don't worry about it.
So basically, there is a breakthrough agreement which has come with loss and damages
Yes.
of funding for the vulnerable countries, which is being hit by climate disasters. So that needs to be done, as well as COP countries has announced a list of steps that reaffirms the commitment to keep temperature
Yeah.
to 1.5 degrees above the industrial times, as well as they have announced the implementation plan that global transformation, a low carbon economy, to keep it there, they need to be investments of about $4 to $6 trillion per year. So my
Right.
question is, from where this funding is going to come from? As well as, so we already know the US being partner in these initiatives. They have already opted out of the Paris Agreement earlier as well, and again they have rejoined it. And on the other side, we have Russia, who has already building coal plants, and they have announced that this is their future plans on that. As well as, I just want to understand how AI and technology is going to play an important role in the solutions to provide to the development or to the developing economies in the world.
Okay, wonderful. I think long list of questions. Some of them are very, very political in nature, but how the government should work and how they should interact and stuff. Of course, they are all doing the best they can. And the agreement, one of the key takeaways that you pointed out, loss and damage, is so important. It's so critical because countries had already been trying to do this over the past decade or so, and this is the first time the text has gone in specifically mentioning loss and damage and how this would, work towards compensation. Now, if you imagine the negotiations parlance, most countries are saying that we all should reduce emissions. Now, everybody cannot reduce emissions together in the same breadth, because there are obviously different resources, different capabilities. Some of the countries would have more resources to deploy and reduce emissions. Some of them will not have. So how do you really identify what is good for everybody? But at the same time, there are historical damages that are being done, right? So if we see 30% of Pakistan, our neighboring country, under floods and water, what really helps them on investing their money, whether they should be looking at rehabilitation, whether they should be looking at moving away from coal-fired plants, whether they should be looking at regenerative agriculture. How do you really engage on that? So if there is funding available for loss and damage to property and loss to human lives and other things that has happened because of historical emissions being very high, whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Indonesia, England, India, whoever, that piece is so important. And for the first time, we have seen this text and finance commitments coming in on loss and damage. Of course, the number is always being debated in terms of what is important, what is efficient. The trillions of dollars that you are mentioning are really, really important. Bulk of it will come in from private capital. Also, there is so much of multilateral and bilateral cooperation happening, so that also helps engage better. So that's my quick response on COP. And AI and tech really helps to map these cash flows and the solutions and the investment requirements and validate this way better. So I'll pause here.
Thank you, Vivek.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek, for this insightful session. Now I'd like to hand over to Mr. Ankit for a vote of thanks and taking forward from here.
Yeah, thank you, Sumit. So I would really, I'm very thankful to Mr. Vivek for giving such an insightful session. Now, what points we have got is like how you do initial setup of plants in Khanapur for this Kolhapur for solid waste management, and what were your learnings? Why should we observe, think, talk, and then take action on climate change? Why and how to prioritize our sustainable development goals and related to green energy, and how blending of climate sustainability, AI, and future consulting can be done. With all these points, it's just like few drops out of the sea we are taking. We'll be concluding this session, and we are really very thankful for you to giving us the time and giving such a good insightful session to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much again. And it was such a pleasure to talk to you all. You all are already so enlightened, and I'd love to remain connected. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on LinkedIn or any other place. And all the best. Good luck in your consulting careers. And I hope each one of you drives a very path-breaking, cutting-edge climate solution in your future lives. So thank you again for having me.
Thanks, Vivek.
Thanks a lot, Vivek.
Krishna, begin.
Hello, everyone. Now we must begin with the next panel, which is going to be the last panel discussion of the day, and that is Future of Consulting, Bridging Strategy and Implementation. Today's leaders need both the ability to craft the right strategy and the skills to implement it. There is, however, a precarious skills gap among leaders. They have been taught how to craft strategy, but not how to implement it. This becomes a major contributor to why 9 out of 10 implementations fail. Change management, which is frequently the default approach for implementation, works well for projects and initiatives inside departments and divisions. However, it does not work for strategy implementation. If it did, then organizations as a whole would not have such a high implementation failure rate. And with this context, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists. I would like to introduce Ms. Nilakshi Kotnis. She has over around 2 decades of professional expertise in business and consulting roles across different industries, with specific focus on management consulting, large-scale program management, planning, and strategy. Currently, she is the founder and director of ThowCentric, a niche consulting firm that focuses on a unique framework applying digital and functional domain expertise to solve problems in supply chain, sales, distribution, and finance. She spent nearly 7 years in independent management consulting, including a brief spell with Octus Advisors, before founding ThowCentric in 2015. Prior to that, she spent 8 years with General Electrics. Academically, she is an MBA from FMS Delhi, India, and a Bachelor's of Engineering in Electronics and Communications from Karnataka University. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us over here today.
Thank you.
Now our next panelist is Mr. Sudipto Ray. He is the managing director of cloud and digital platform at PwC's Advisory Acceleration Centers in India. Mr. Sudipto is a leader with the firm's cloud and digital platform for Oracle Technologies. As a senior leader with more than 23 years of career experience, Sudipto has played various roles spanning information technology and related consulting services. Sudipto specializes in the areas of business and technology interlock, and his professional engagement experiences are in technology competency, practice management, technology center leadership, operations and competency development, digital experience and cloud program deliveries, solution design, execution and quality, business process re-engineering, data science, data supply chain, innovation design and development. His technology and consulting experience spans various industries across automotive, metals, mining, telecommunication, IT and ITES. He has worked extensively in technology digital solutions in the manufacturing sector. Prior to joining PwC, Mr. Sudipto worked with Accenture in their advanced technology centers and India domestic business services line. Mr. Sudipto is a chartered accountant by profession and has pursued several other certifications, executive learning initiative throughout his career journey, including certificate course in data science and business analytics from Praxis Business School, Wharton University leadership workshops on leadership and managing change, strategy and growth innovation program at MIT Sloan School of Management. We welcome you, sir, to the panel discussion.
Now, I would like to introduce Dr. K. Ganesh, our next panelist. Dr. K. Ganesh is Associate Partner, Senior Knowledge Expert, and Global Lead of Manufacturing and Supply Chain Center of Competence, McKinsey & Company, India. He specializes in logistics and supply chain transformation for industry verticals such as CPG, auto OEM, and pharma. He has graduated in production engineering with the university's first rank and pursued his master's degree in industrial engineering with first rank from NIT Trichy. He did his PhD in supply chain from IIT Madras. He is having a total of 18 plus years of research and consulting experience. He has published more than 180 papers in leading international journals and write 13 international books. He is on editorial board for 5 international journals and on the reviewer board for more than 10 renowned international journals. Thank you, sir, for joining us today.
Hey, thanks, Shesha. Very good evening.
Our
Greetings to
next
everyone.
panelist is
We
Mr.
can't hear you, sir.
Oh, can't hear me?
I think we could hear him all right.
We can hear you.
We can hear him all right.
We can hear him. Next panelist is Mr. Devrup Dhar. He's a co-founder and board member at Primus Partners India, a new age professional service firms. He has about 20 years of professional experience with prominent clients both in public and private sector. Before co-founding Primus Partners, Mr. Devrup was a partner with KPMG and has earlier worked with organizations like TCS, PwC, and Accenture. Mr. Devrup focuses on digital and technology advisory and has worked in areas like biometrics and identity management, justice and security, government transformation, digital and new age technologies, analytics. He has worked on marquee projects and initiatives including Aadhaar, unique identification, smart cities, e-service delivery programs, Swachh Bharat Clean India program, modernization and digitization of film archive. He has led multidisciplinary and large teams in delivering client projects. His clients included global conglomerates, stock exchanges, large pharma companies, state and central governments, urban local bodies, donors, and multilaterals. We welcome you, sir, to the panel discussion.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone.
Good evening, sir.
Now I would like to introduce our next panelist, that is Mr. Vasant Mugdha. Mr. Vasant Mugdha has been with GEP worldwide for over 12 years now. He's worked with 40 plus clients, including Fortune 500 and Global 2000 companies in the procurement and supply chain consulting space, with clients mostly in the pharmaceutical, CPG, and manufacturing industries. He has worked and traveled across almost all the geographies. Mr. Vasant has completed his MBA from S.J. Mehta School of Management, IIT Bombay in 2010. Prior to MBA, he worked with Infosys Technologies for 3 years. He has completed electronics and communications engineering from Andhra University. Vasant is based out of Mumbai and stays with his wife and 7-year-old son. Thank you, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, sorry for the glitch. Hope I'm audible now, right, Sesha?
Yes, yes.
Fine. Thanks a lot. Good evening, everyone. Greetings.
Yes, good evening.
Now, next we have our moderator, Professor Munish Thakur. Professor Munish Thakur is a professor of strategy at the XLRI Jamshedpur. He has nearly 2 decades of experience. Professor Thakur teaches strategy, entrepreneurship, philosophy of research, and research methods. He is passionate about nature and holistic education, especially in management and student-centered teaching. Throughout his teaching career, he has experimented with a variety of pedagogical learning techniques, such as simulation, case studies, discussions, and reflections. At XLRI, he has been chairperson of Xavier Admission Test and Fellow Program in Management. He is a fellow of the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. We welcome you, sir, for the discussion.
Thank you, Ankit, and good afternoon or good evening to all of you. I hope I'm audible to all. And welcome to this session. This is, I hope it turns out to be pretty interesting session for us. Now, this session primarily pertains to business strategy implementation. You know, how do they come together, and what does it mean for the future of consulting? Well, if you ask me, strategy implementation is all about converting something which is hazy, like vision, into concrete plans, projects, goals, and metrics. It's a very, very difficult process to understand. In my opinion, if you look at things which are more difficult than rocket science, I would say strategy implementation process would be one of those processes. What makes it so difficult for us to manage strategy or implement strategy? In my opinion, there are, this process is full of contradictions because strategists cannot refer to textbooks when they deal with strategy and implementation. Strategy primarily deals with a lot of uncertainties. Of course, there are some certainties, some uncertainties. There's a lot of half knowledge which is there. We can't predict anything at all. Just look at, we couldn't have predicted pandemic. We couldn't have predicted great resignation. And now we are almost heading towards something like we can call what's happening with the startup world as great firing, if I can sort of term it like that. And there's no formula for implementation. At best, you have only half formulas. There's a lot of complexity. You have some judgment, you have some clues, you have some insights, you have some hunches. So implementing strategy is full of contradiction, right? Because you're dealing with emotions which pertain to something like value and the beliefs that people have. You're dealing with objective knowledge. How do you produce a product, right? What kind of technology do you adopt? Yeah, you're dealing with abstract as well as concrete. In fact, as I told you earlier, one way to describe strategy could be how do you convert hazy into concrete? So you're dealing with both hazy as well as concrete when you're dealing with strategy implementation. And you're dealing with top as well as bottom. Sometimes you get the top right, but bottom is not right. You get the bottom right, operations right, but you don't have the vision, right? So there's a lot of contradiction. And the contradictions sort of don't stop here, right? There are contradictions galore, right? You're dealing with technology. You think that you have mastered one technology, but then another wave of technology comes and you realize you are behind the technology curve, right? And so, and many times if you get the technology right, which is more objective, you realize that you're not getting people right, which is more subjective, which is more value driven, right? If you get your if you manage your costs very well, you don't sometimes manage your revenues very well, right? If you manage your market share very well, you don't manage your profit very well. If you manage suppliers very well, you don't get customers right. And if you manage competitors very well, you don't get your partners right, right? If you manage organizations very well, maybe you're not able to manage environment, right? And if you manage, markets very well, you can't manage national governments, right? If you manage national governments very well, probably the global forces become difficult to manage. In fact, if you manage everything else very well, planets is very difficult to manage. And if by mistake you are good at managing all these kind of contradictions, you realize that, it's very difficult for you to manage success because, very soon once you start to manage success, it leads to hubris and fall of organizations. So these are the very difficult challenges, contradictions that, strategists have to deal with. And on one hand, you have strategists who are trying to implement strategy. On the other hand, you have consultants who are trying to make this easy, this process easy for organization, helping organization understand these contradictions, helping them overcome in telling them how to go about implementing interesting solutions. So we have in our panel 5 distinguished consultants who are going to help us understand as to how the future of consulting is panning out in next 10 to 15 years. In my opinion, consultants help organization get through these contradictions through their rich experience, knowledge, empathy, intelligence, a lot of practical knowledge that they bring to the organization. Now, with this, the strategy implementation has in a way changed over a period of time. In 70s and 80s, organization used to have this huge strategic planning department. And then in 90s, entire thing shifted towards from plans to the plan shifted to sort of spreadsheet. Then, from spreadsheet in the last decade or so, we went towards probably dashboards. And right now we are heading towards artificial intelligence and machine learning and how it's, affecting strategy implementation. To sort of understand this process, how it is unfolding, how probably it will unfold in future, we're going to start with our discussion and probably because we have only one lady in the panel, so probably we'll start the discussion with Nilakshi. Nilakshi, please, I was very interested in the name of your company, which is Thou-centric. I hope it refers to how do you sort of understand the other, or how do you understand the customer or the employee? So could you take us through to the process of strategy implementation as you do it? What was the traditional way of implementing strategy in your opinion, and how is it changing? How is Thou-centric changing the strategy implementation, consulting as well as practice of it? So I now invite you to sort of share your opinion on this.
Thank you, sir, for the opportunity to speak first, and thank you to this group to be part of this panel. It's definitely a huge validation of the fact that we are doing something right to be part of this forum. And I represent Thou-centric, and you very rightly, it is the Shakespearean thou, as in centered around you. And the you means the employee, the client, the ecosystem in which we operate, so that we understand each other better and able to keep the focus always on the problem solving for that particular you that we're dealing with. Right. For us, in terms of the very premise of Thou-centric has been structured around exactly this problem that we are facing as part of the problem solving journey as a consultant. Right. I'll just take a step back before I answer this question because it's a subject very close to every single Daoshian that you will speak with. And I hope it reverberates the same thought process that I'm going to explain. The last few decades has seen a huge change. You know, it started with the IT revolution. Consulting world is a very mature, a very old traditional way of solving problems for clients. And we have some veterans in the group here today as well to be able to talk about that. Around in the 2000 time frame is when the IT revolution happened, where solutioning started happening through building digital solutions for clients. And post that, now we are talking about how to bridge the gap between strategy and implementation, because most implementations involve the application of a technological solution for that problem, right? I believe the way the IT revolution happened in the industry about 3-4 decades ago, when I was part of the GE world, where I was on the other side of the equation, helping roll out programs for our businesses and taking advantage of the consulting expertise that was available to us, and also trying to get those problems solved by outsourcing some of that problem to the burgeoning IT industry at that point in time. What actually happened as we look backwards is these two started becoming parallel industries in the making, so to speak, right? The strategies were being advocated by the traditional consulting companies, and the implementations were being done by the IT companies, which were getting formed along the journey. And employees or the problem solvers also started taking different approaches to build the skills and capabilities in the system, right? And that is when I started my consulting journey after the GE stint, I realized that there is a gap. There is a gap in the industry where if I am at a 30,000 feet level or a 50,000 feet level advocating a strategy recommendation for a company, and I am at the ground nodal level where I'm actually executing some of that problem solving, I'm missing both sides of the picture because I'm not the same person, right? And that is what Dao-centric premise of consulting is hinged on, where we try to understand the relevance of both the application of the necessary technology to solve that problem and why that problem happened in the first place. So you need to be able to understand both parts of that world equally and be able to do the execution with as much finesse. And that ability cannot be done by two different stratas of the problem solving journey. It has to happen by being relevant to the problem in itself, by understanding the ecosystem as a consultant. If I'm a problem solver for the client that I'm working on, I better be equipped with equal knowledge and exposure to both sides of the world. And part of the problem was a little easy for us to, when we started this organization, we were very, very lucky and extremely proud of the fact that some very good abled industry folks joined us in the beginning, who've been there, done that as employees of large multi-matrix environments, who knew what it is to build that strategy and who also knew what it is to solve that problem, right? And this helped us bring, the soul of the organization is actually being able to pick up those kind of consultants who understand that this is what it takes to solve the problem. Roll up your sleeves, be part of the client teams, understand that ecosystem, understand where that recommendation should work based on what the problem is, and then be able to translate that because we know also how to execute the problem. We've done that time and over again as part of being employees of organizations like that. So most of the consulting industry, and with due respect to most of the panel members here, and they're more veterans from the organizations and individuals themselves, it is, we picked up people from campuses, and those were the most sought after jobs in campuses when companies like what we have in the forum came to our campuses, right? And the answer to every single interview, or when the buzz in the campuses used to be, what do you want to do? I want to do strategy work, right? I've just finished, I've done my graduation, I've done my post-graduation, and I'm now going to help build strategies. If I have, what we've tried to avoid the temptation of bringing in that kind of cadence in our system is getting industry experts who've been there, done that as employees, and not as business analysts who are very, very smart individuals. I myself am a product of that kind of a background. But I believe that knowledge gained from execution, knowing how to solve that problem and doing it over and over again, is an ability which you can't pick up from campus. You will need to build that cadence in the system. So that is the first thing we did. It was easy for us to ensure that the people who represent the organization today, who have been at the helm of building the organization, have been people who are good strategists, good problem solvers, and we started solving problems for our clients from day one in that manner, right? And that thread of pedigree, that thread of understanding, we've built in through the entire ecosystem of Thou-Centric, which is a 500 strong organization today. So to cut the answer short, I believe that you need to have nuances of both in the organization to be able to recommend and then know what it is to solve by being part of your client ecosystem as well.
Professor, you're on mute if you're talking.
For that, there seems to be some problem with my video as well. Somehow it's showing from a distance. I'm trying to fix it, but I cannot. So apologies, you'll have to bear with this kind of screen. So thank you, Nilakshi, for that. Probably I will move to Sudipto now, and Sudipto, who is coming from PwC and has a rich experience in managing PwC for more than 2 decades. So Sudipto, can you help us understand as to how probably strategy implementation and consulting is changing in Web 3.0, and is it possible that in future probably strategy consulting would move towards more of universal kind of solutions, like you have a grand unified theory in physics, that's a singularity kind of stuff. Is it possible that consulting would also move towards singularity in Web 3.0 world?
Thank you. That's a difficult question to answer. That's difficult to predict, but I think the world of consulting, as I say, is all about possible, art of possible, and art of what's beyond possible. So, and I think I definitely want to pick on some very, very important themes that you started with, Professor, and then Nilakshi talked about that. Strategy and implementation were often very delinked, set of people with different thought processes. Consulting at the end of the day is quite a lot of information. So you really have to be aware of things. So I call being conversant of what's it about, and being conversant of what are the solution themes. Consulting is a lot about removing constraints, bottlenecks, problems, right, and look for solutions. And lastly, consulting is a lot about creating impact. Technology will come and go, Web.3, we are talking about things like metaverse. There's lots of new things that are coming, Bottom line, they're all enablers to solutions, right? They're enablers to removing constraints, bottlenecks, problems. They're also not only that, but they're about innovation, most importantly. And whereas at the end of the day, innovation comes from, again, to what Nilakshi said, how do you apply, and how do you apply your human mind on top of what you have as tools to enable? So with that said, I would say that point of singularity, don't know how to answer that very crisply, but I would put it this way, that there is a lot of technology that is evolving, along with artificial intelligence, emotional intelligence. What is that? That is about data. That is about how we comprehend, act, and learn. That is about understanding situations, judging those situations, developing solutions, and rolling them out. And, the traditional world of consulting talked a lot about value creation. I think the present world of technology-led, technology-powered, it's a converged world. I'd like to touch upon convergence of different enablers, right? So strategy that comes from the human mind, implementation that comes with a lot of technology as well as processes. And both of these come together, converge to create impact. A lot of us used to talk about value in the past, create value. But sometimes the measure of value can be subjective. The measure of value can be short-lived. It is now about creating impact. So often we use the word these days, business to individual, right? So it's how the impact to the individual, impact to the society. And if you are aware of a lot of situations and what are the mechanisms to solve for them, if you're aware of what information and data is needed, it has to be contextual for the problem or the outcomes you're trying to derive. You will have technology which can predict and propose outcomes. I think a lot of that is happening already, and I definitely feel that yes, it is not just the art of possible, but the art of beyond possible, and maybe we can get to that point with all of technology and human intelligence coming together.
Thank you so much, Sudipta, for that. From value creation to convergence is what you're trying to say.
Yes.
We now sort of move to Dr. Ganesh, who has been working with McKinsey and who's also been working on the supply chain. And I think I also see him being a practitioner as well as knowledge creator, because he's got a lot of articles to him and he's publishing regularly. So it's a very interesting mix we have. So now, Dr. Ganesh, can you help us understand how are the supply chains sort of changed in the recent times? Especially you've seen that the supply chains, the direction of the supply chain has shifted from earlier it was from west to east and now from east to west. And how is that changing the consulting landscape? Are you seeing that there is more trust in organization from East, or are consultants for East more acceptable with this change? Or do you still find difficulty in terms of, consultant from East not being so much acceptable? Did you see that, this a change of directional supply chain, and is there also a change of consulting firms and consultants along with it? So your views on it, please.
Thanks, Professor Monish. I hope I'm audible. Fantastic questions. How actually things are changing in supply chain. So let me step back. I think in supply chain now, especially many of the clients, so the bus is the business. The bus will run. You consultants have to come, change the tire while the bus runs. You can't stop the bus. The bus will run. I think you are a consultant coming along. Hey, come on. Hey, stop the plan, stop the setup, and I do wonders. I change the tires. I change everything for you. I think that is not the state today, right? And the bus will run. The tires has to be changed. And why I'm saying this, this is where I think the overall competition going along, right? And let me step back. I think we are talking about strategy. We're talking about supply chain. I think I can say this forum, right? So McKinsey is no more a only strategy company, right? I think we were doing strategy, agree, we have moved away only from, from only strategy company, right? So I think nobody actually accept you as a consultant if you bring a strategy. If you can bring strategy, that is great, fantastic, awesome, good, very good. And I have a toy, I have a doll, awesome, very good. You actually gave the answer. But I think stepping back, you need to kind of give a proper design, be it a process, be it a product, be it a system, whatever it is, right? So you need to move there from a strategy, and clients will not leave there. Come on, walk with us, do execution, help us the team to kind of build the capability. So it is not about you come and do the service and make wonders and go along. This has to be a sustainable. Make the capability, build the capability, and make the design robust, and then do the implementation. And don't leave us in the implementation as well. The execution, in the sense, it's a pilot. I think lot of digital transformation, especially in supply chain, gone haywire, and people actually say, right, digital doesn't work out, and because you haven't planned the pilot properly, you haven't planned the prototype properly, and then move to the the full scale implementation, and then move along, right? So I think that's how the strategy plus supply chain has completely changed in the last decade. So there was one portion of the thought process. Quickly, in the next 30 or 40 seconds, how supply chain is evolving today. I think everyone knows today. I think from the complexities of the all over the world, Ukraine invasion, COVID, inflation, price volatility, consumer behavior got changed. There is a new shopping methods evolved, right? Just imagine the last three years, how many, let's say if I would take a survey here from the group, user chat, what percentage of the consumers would have changed the shopping behavior? Give me some percentage, 20, 30, 40. How many would have changed the shopping behavior? I just want a number, just high level number. What would be your, the completely shopping behavior got changed in the last few years? I just want to see the number in the chat. If you have access to a chat, please provide the number, 30%, 40%, or 60%. Yeah, 30%, okay, awesome. Consumer try new shopping behavior, imagine, 40, 60. Very good, the number is rising, by the way. From our survey, it clearly says it's 91%, the new shopping behavior. It's actually completely different. It is about different retailer, it's about different store, different website, different brand, new digital shopping method. You actually have a different, I don't need to teach all of this to you. A new shopping method, and it's also a private label and store brand, right? So consumer shopping behavior completely got changed. That is number one. And I know the online setup is also evolving a lot, and that also changed like 25-30% higher. So given all this, the reason I was saying this because it's not about only the Ukraine and COVID and other invasion or all other complexities, right? So it is about changing consumer behavior as well. And there are huge disruption from supply chain, which can be a global shortage in logistics. You know this, ocean freight rates up to 300 to 600%. You don't believe. If you go and tell the clients, Shanghai to India, it increased like 200, 300, 600%. And on top of it, labor shortages and the huge semicon crisis and so on and so forth. Right? It's all actually the perfect storm of events which we gone across in the last 4 or 5 years. And probably you would have seen the image going viral on social media where we see a lot of ships which is stagnant on the sea. That is also social media kind of adding fuel on top of the fire, right? So it is almost like Shanghai ports remain open but is handling less cargo, but volume actually fall because of many reasons. It is because of factories are closed, producing less. Trucking is also hard to obtain. Sometimes the import cargo cannot leave the port. So I'm just setting the ground here. Right? So this all actually got of changed. A lot of shock happened. A lot of shock happened, right? So what happened, right? Because of all this shock in the supply chain, almost 1 month disruption, which actually, if a disruption occurs, any shock occurs, if it actually lasts for a 1 month, that disruption occurs every 3-4 years. COVID is different, leave the COVID part. So the other disruptions almost occur every 3.5 or 3.7 years. That actually lasts for a 1 month, right? That causing the losses almost worth of 45% of 1 year's EBITDA during a decade. Right? It is almost like a 45% of 1 year's EBITDA during a decade. So that's a clear number McKinsey put on the table, right? And that's where I think what is evolving in supply chain, the good old objective of I'll bring the high profit margin, high cash flow, high delayed service, that actually can't change drastically. It is about I bring a high segmented service. I'll actually say no to few consumer, right? I bring a high delight segmented service, and I actually bring a high profit margin with a huge thinking and cost reduction. So what has evolved in the supply chain in the last few years is the below, right? I think the expectations are huge, 90+ on-time in full expectation on the consumer. In the direct to store consumer, which is like 1 to 2 days, people are expecting, even at it's in a few hours. And that's where the strategy evolved from a 3 different angles. One is focus on risk and resilience. Risk is there for a long time, but it is more of how do you think through resilience. I'll probably talk more in the next slot, but focus on resilience has come, number one, and focus on intelligent automation. I'm not going to automate everything. I have to figure out the intelligent automation, where and how I'm going to think through an intelligent automation, because you have seen the lighthouses, especially the World Economic Forum. 3 years back, 20 lighthouses. Today is almost 96 lighthouses, and out of which China and India are leading the numbers in terms of the Asia, right? So that way, I think the intelligent automation is also very important. Sustainability, because consumers and regulators are demanding transparency and also emission reductions, which is actually calling the supply chain to be more sustainable. So resilience, market volatility, the event-driven disruptions that create a case for a robust and resilient supply chain, number one. Digitization, the tech-enabled, coupled with the increased connectivity, dramatically changing the supply chain, and then sustainability, right? These 3 trends kind of evolving. The clients would love to focus along with your so-called strategy, and how do we implement along with this 3 dimensions. So let me pause my thoughts over to Professor. Would love to kind of discuss more on resilience in the next slot.
Thanks for picking up this point on resilient supply chains and the importance of sustainability there. We now would like to hear from, I think we can move to Devrup, and Devrup has, in a way,
seems we lost you, Professor. Yeah.
No, that's fine. Yeah. So, Devrup, what do you think? I mean, in what ways is the strategy changing? Because you represent a part of the firm which is a new age firm, a small firm which is trying to compete with other big companies. So in what ways is the strategy implementation changing for you? In what ways you guys approach clients? How is it different? Do you go about implementing strategy in a different way compared to a lot of other big companies? So I would like to hear your opinion on this.
Sure. So thanks, Professor Manish. And once again, thanks for inviting me for this panel. So I think I echo the points made by my fellow panelists that the world of strategy is changing, and there is a clear convergence between strategy and implementation. What was there probably as very distant industries, maybe 10 years back, 15 years back, is today more of a converged place. Today, clients don't talk about strategy in silo. They would want you to implement the strategy as well. They would want you to walk the talk. And they would want you to be a partner in the whole process, which means you also carry a part of the risk, which means there is also a reward sharing if the strategy and the implementation works out. As an organization, as a new organization, as a new firm in the consulting space, I would just want to clarify probably one thing, that I don't think we are in a position to be competing with any of the larger firms. I think there is enough and more place and enough and more work for everyone to focus on. And India is the place to be. And this is definitely, as many people have said, that this is going to be India's decade and India's century. And all of us out here firmly believe that. So there's enough and more in the country for everyone to be focusing on. So coming back to strategy and how we work with clients, or maybe two or three thoughts that we discuss with clients when they're focusing on strategy or strategy plus implementation. One thing for sure is today, no client wants only strategy. Broadly, they're aware of what needs to be done. Broadly, they're aware of the direction. They will talk to you only if you are a specialist in that area. And if you are ready to walk the talk with them and help them implement that strategy and bring value or bring impact. What we do today has to be what we have seen from our experiences, our strategy along with the implementation has to be very agile. Gone are the days when you could create a 5-year, 10-year roadmap. 10 years from now is going to be very different from what we are seeing right now. It's even probably difficult to imagine what the world would be 10 years down the line. So strategy as well as the implementation has to be very quick, agile, and being able to bring out scenarios, being able to, Dr. Ganesh spoke about pilots. I think that's a very important word, being able to bring out scenarios, do pilots, learn, adapt, and make changes. And that's what we are seeing in our discussions with clients. That's what we are seeing in our approach. And that's what the clients today want to focus on. Another important aspect that we are seeing is the whole digital focus. Like digital cannot be, it's not the last thing. It's basically the first thing that clients want to talk about. And that is at the center of all strategy implementation discussions that we have. So that's something which is critical and which we are seeing. And last thing I would say is clients today are very aware and very serious about the whole impact it has on the ecosystem, on whether on sustainability, on climate, etc. So what you want to do has to be in sync with all these larger goals and objectives. So I would say these are 2 or 3 things that we are seeing in our work with clients, in discussions with clients around strategy and implementation. Back to you, Professor.
Devru, for this and highlighting the importance of implementation in today's world. We now move to Vasant Mogada, who is with GE, and Vasant would like to also get into a little bit of, when you sort of go and implement strategies, right? One is, of course, Mr. Ganesh was talking about importance of supply chains there, but there's also a very important aspect of culture, which probably Nalakshi also spoke about a little bit. So have you seen challenges in terms of implementing strategy and getting culture right and getting implementation around the culture and getting alignment around the culture right? Is it still the problem that you face in new age with the new age companies? Or is it something of the past that culture is no more relevant? So culture can't eat strategy for the breakfast, that kind of statement. So we'd like to hear your opinion on that.
Sure. Professor Manish, I think that's a great question, and good evening to all the esteemed panelists. In terms of culture, I think it is all the more important in today's world, especially with mixed sort of work experiences or people sitting in different locations and working um, as well as the if at all the strategy comes in from one company, the time which they would have spent to understand the culture of it versus the company which kind of establishes the strategy uh, with the new agency, right, with the company. There's a huge amount of gap, which I would say would be the understanding of the people and also the culture. Right? That's one of the big factors which kind of plays in. At least at GEP, Globally Procured, one of the things which our founders, when they started off this consulting organization, was the philosophy of let's not just do strategy, but we'll do the actual implementation of it. But we'll not stop at implementation, but we'll also look at compliance, right? The compliance of the implementation, like how well is it going? How closely are we delivering the results, established metrics? And if there are changes which need to be made, we'll tweak them if at all they are necessary. So in all this, and we've been part of the strategy building as well as implementation, and also been a part of, at least I've been a part of some of those cases where we do the implementation aspect of it. And I think the first and foremost, when we start off a particular engagement, is to spend a lot of time just understanding what are the what is the core culture of a particular company, right? How do we go to senior team members? How do we interact with them? Has the strategy been bought in? What sort of POCs have been mentioned to them? And what is the end result of the whole program, right? Is it all tied to the objectives and the overall charter of the particular program? How well is it bought in, so on and so forth? But even after that, right, when we are interacting with the team members, it's also important to closely work with them to understand how closely are we working together with them, more from a culture standpoint. So I think culture is definitely all the more important, and organizations themselves are working hard to make sure that the culture continues in the current day. And we coming in uh, as a consulting firm, helping implement and doing the compliance aspect of it, it plays all the more important a role to work with them and ensure that the culture aspect of it is taken. I would put it that way, Professor Munish. I hope I answered the question there.
So I'll sort of continue with, because you also work in the area of supply chain, and so how do you sort of integrate supply chain with the culture of the organization? I mean, and you have a lot of experience in pharma, CPG, and manufacturing, right? Yeah. So can you tell us something about how do you bring the two together, supply chain and culture? Yeah, because I haven't come across many people who can talk about alignment of both the things.
Perfect. And I would definitely, also want to hear more from the panel team members. I've worked on several clients where, again, from a culture perspective, when we are working with a pharmaceutical client, which has a different sort of business vision, right? Like during the COVID time, their key challenge was to make sure that the medicines delivery was on time, it is available at all the locations. Versus CPG, it has a different problem statement altogether. Nowadays, with the 10-minute delivery and all, I think it's all the more challenging. The supply chains, there's a lot of pressure for them, and also the CPG companies, right? And the manufacturing companies, erstwhile, with margins being a big issue for them. How would they manage it? So each of these companies have a different theme or a different sort of a challenge to face, and all these companies are at a different level of maturity, I would say, right? When we talk to companies within the pharma space, again, there are so many companies at different levels of maturity. So when we talk to each of these companies, we first try to understand, what is it that is driving the change, and why do they need that change? Is it top driven, top down driven? Is it coming in from a particular entity within the company? How well is it aligned overall? And what is the culture of the people? Like, how well are they in terms of receiving or working with consultants, right? Um, be it in the North America, South America region, any region for that matter. Again, those regional nuances also play a big role. So we do spend a lot of time just trying to understand how receptive are these clients and stakeholders. Again, there could be a specific set of stakeholders. And as I think Devrup was saying, or Dr. Ganesh was talking about, I think it's important to run the right POC, like pick up the right proof of concept, be able to drive and show them the results, right? Road shows, which we call, but these are actual road shows where we are showing the results to the folks. So once we do that, a lot of the change gets driven there. And then slowly the change, the greater change aspect of it comes into picture. So yeah, that probably is one of the ways of talking about it or thinking about it, Professor Manish.
Thank you, Vasant. We'll move to another round, but we'll probably keep this round a little short because we're also we've been given a mandate of finishing it by 5:30 sharp. So Nilakshi, I'll come back to you, and you're talking about strategy being primarily a problem-solving exercise, right? And when you look at problem solving from the client's perspective, and you are working with all kinds of people, and this diversity has sort of increased in organization. With increase in diversity, what has also happened is, there's no respect for the expert knowledge that used to be probably 20 years back or 30 years back. You go to a client and say, oh, this guy consultant, so what if he's a consultant or she's a consultant? I don't accept the acceptance of consultant. Do you see that with increase in diversity in organization, and not only within organization but across organization, there is a challenge for consultants to be accepted, right? And that's, in a sense, one is the technological side of it, problem-solving side of it. Other is the emotional side of it. How do you manage that non-acceptance sometimes, which comes because, let's say that I don't accept you as a consultant. Have you faced some kind of situation, and how do you sort of deal with these kind of situations?
Oh, yes. Very early in my consulting journey, we had, I remember one conversation, which was fairly eye-opening for me as a budding consultant. We met with a very senior, he was a president of a large nutritionist company, right? And he was obviously a gray-haired person sitting across the table, and he said, I don't understand you consultants. Sitting outside of my organization, how can you tell me who is here based on my qualification and my experience to run this company, tell me how to run the company better? It's just not going to be, it is a very difficult thing for him to understand as a concept, right? So I think those barriers are, fortunately for us as consultants, changing very rapidly, because we are essentially the same people sitting across the table. And what we are trying to do is to try and not have those identifiers, or make yourself feel part of the same team is a very important barrier you need to break right at the beginning. The minute the person sitting in front of you starts understanding and accepting you as part of that problem-solving team, then the role that you're playing is towards a common goal of solving that problem, rather than trying to intercept whether I'm going to sit and recommend a strategy. Because like you said, right, the respect for being understood as a consultant who's supposed to know everything beforehand is now, it's a matter of a click. Even a 15-year-old is going to do a Google search and tell you the answers to what this problem. He'll have 100 frameworks, thrown up at you, and it is not going to be a difficult thing to know what other possible alternatives I can use to apply in my world. What will matter to me is how fast and how relevant you are to my problem solving journey. Are you going to help me take to the next level of clarity in my organization growth, right? And if that barrier I'm able to somehow manage to convince the client, I think half the problem is solved. You don't need to be on either side. You don't need to have that because I remember, as a client, when I was part of the GE world, it was very intriguing to be in part of in groups and conversations where there was this large, big firm sitting there with a lot of wisdom and knowledge. Half of it, literally, I wouldn't understand just by that blinker that I had in my mind, that I'm talking to someone, who's like the veteran in the industry trying to tell me what to do better, right? The minute I accept them as my team member, those barriers get solved. And it is about that human understanding, owning that problem, and just feeling comfortable about solving the problem too. Because it doesn't mean that none of us know the answer. It just means expediting the problem solving. And if we get to that, it just becomes a matter of time, because we are intelligent people, we are commonsensical people whose goals become common at the end of it. And I believe that's the start. And part of 80% of the problems get solved just in accepting us to be one team.
Thank you, Nilakshi. It's a very difficult process sometimes to come to a common ground. But thanks for those insights. Sudipto, I'll move back to you. And you were talking about how technologies are converging or towards singularity, if I might use that word.
Yeah.
So what kind of consulting space do you see emerging in next 10, 15 years because of convergence of technology? And do you think the technology consulting side of business will become more and more important, and it'll hit the business consulting firms, or do you think both kind of companies are going to be benefiting from this convergence that you see happening for next 10, 15 years?
Yeah, sure, Manish, I think that's a great question. And see, in my view, I believe just like anything else in today's world, there is convergence. And I would like to call out, I think, consulting as a profession, consulting firms, organizations, there used to be a competitive culture to them, right? That we know it all, we can do it all, and we will convince. So there was competitiveness, there was this zeal to be very convincing, and we would do everything possible, right, as consultants to make that happen. There's a tectonic shift that's happening there. And from being competitive, I say being complementary is very, very important. And that's where convergence comes in, that, you could have a great strategy, which can only work by testing it, as many of us talked about, through pilots, through models, to see how it will work, right? And that skill could be coming from somewhere else. So that's where I would say that it's not about just the strategy, just the vision. It's about the impact, the outcome, and how do you define a problem. I can give you some examples. Just some time back, I follow the automotive industry quite well. There was a global chip shortage, right? And we did refer to that in our discussions earlier in this panel. And therefore, a manufacturer could make their product, but it's stuck because of a supply chain issue of a component that comes from somebody else. What were strategies that were evolved to do that, right? So one was obviously many companies, they went into slowdown, they couldn't promise. Some of the smarter ones, they devised a strategy to say that, okay, I'm going to launch 2 new versions, which will be, slightly differently positioned in the market. We don't need all the necessary features. let's look at segmenting the customer base to say, are they wanting a sports car? Are they wanting a car with features? Are they willing to give up on certain things? And that strategy worked for them because they could actually completely turn around the numbers that they could produce given there was a chip shortage. So it's going out of the ordinary. So I think in my view, therefore, this kind of complementary approach to things, then thinking differently in terms of what is the impact I can go and create on the customer. I'm going to bring another perspective around the customer itself. So consultants are always challenged a lot by their clients, right? And mind you, I think clients look for clients themselves have several approaches with which they engage with consultants. One is that of, I think they often look for validation. So they know it very well. They understand what they want to do, but they want a validation with the help of consultants. Consultants can bring a perspective that could be slightly broader and different. How? Through enabling technologies, through converging technologies. They could test their vision with models and hypotheses with the data, right? That's what we talked about in the earlier, which is the whole Web3 semantic web. But it has to be very trustworthy data, right? Second is, a lot of our clients are coming and looking for, they give us a whiteboard approach to consultants, say, do this, and I can talk about various examples of, okay, digital. So it's the buzzword, but make it happen for us. Now, how do you implement digital? You might have to just go back and change certain, and I've done a lot of BPR work wherein you could take a very simple procure to pay flow and say that, hey, there are 5 digital interventions. It will change the way the process works in the organization. So many clients therefore give you that whiteboard to draw things up. Again, it's domain knowledge, it's technology knowledge that's going to make it happen. I think the third scenario that also comes with is strategize in partnership, bring partners, converge points of view. So if you look at, therefore, how consultants need to change from being overtly competitive to be more complementary in terms of their vision, the impact that we can create, I would say, even we talked about things like impact to the environment, impact to the society at large. There's so many things that come in, right? And then, the clients and what they are looking for. One thing about consultants, and I'd like to summarize this part of what I say, is sometimes as consultants also, we have to be a little more clear, I would say, in terms of sometimes we think, oh, client wants this. And we shy away from saying that, okay, clients need this. So this is one of the biggest challenges of consulting, that, you need to hear what I want you to know, what you need to do, rather than what you want to hear and what you want to do. And I think that's finally can be done with the help of all these things that I talked about. So back to you, Professor Manish.
Thank you so much, Sudipta. That's a very interesting point, what you need versus what you want, right? A good consultant, what is needed by the client, but there should be acceptance on the part of client of that solution. That's a challenging part. And you talked about complementarity in there. So thank you so much. I will now move to Dr. Ganesh. And Dr. Ganesh, you mentioned about resilience of supply chain. You also mentioned about risk management, and you also use a very interesting word, which is called intelligent automation, right? So, how do you create knowledge around these automations? And you have a lot of issues. You're talking about issue of diversity. We're talking about planet. We're talking about being more sensitive. So, how does the knowledge management change this context, and how do you see it changing for next 10, 15 years as a new age consulting evolves?
Yeah, thanks, Professor. I think it's a fantastic question. So I think I'll step back and understand in phases. Maybe I'll take 90 seconds to answer. Number one, resilience, right? And the resilience now, I call it as a life insurance in a global supply chain. That's what I'm saying to most of the client, because that is very important today. I mean, the good old days, I'd say, as I mentioned, it's quality, service, and cost and capital. But as Dev said, agility is also one area which is evolving. On top of it, resilience is also the new normal, right? So that's a new dimension. I think most of the company look at resilience. If you go and ask resilience, you go and ask risk, first of all, put the resilience later. If you go and ask risk, as a dimension, people say, I look at operational risk, financial risk. So a decade back or 4 to 5 years back, there is a 2 risk which is put on the table. Now, we actually have beyond this 2. We have a regulatory risk, which is actually very important as we are actually growing global. The degree of oversight and regulatory and how the change in regulations and so on. So that is one important risk. And the 4th risk is, as we are talking about digitization, obviously we end up having a data security, right? That is also a bigger risk, right? And how do you kind of, because of poor cybersecurity posture and sometimes insufficient data protection protocol happens in some supplier, third-party logistics service provider, and so on and so forth. So that is a 4th risk evolving. And structural, I think, given your logistics complexity, what many of our panel members mentioned, the trade tensions and the national events and so on and so forth, that is also evolving as a the 5th one. Then sustainability in the organization, there is also another risk, which is the emissions from the production, logistics, and so on and so forth. The last one is very shocked to know this risk, which is reputational risk, because sometimes poor labor management in the company, breaking laws, your supplier breaking laws, and so on and so forth. So that way, this is also very important, right? So that way, this 7 different risks which is evolving, and you're going to look at your supply chain, you're going to look at your consulting, not only from a standard operation and financial risk, the 7 different risks evolving, and you're going to look at your consulting from 7 risks. That's why resilience towards these 7 risks, how we kind of bring it back is important. And always people think resilience is only for a bad time. It's not only for a bad time, it's also for a good time. So resilience is not only for a bad time, it is also a good time, because I think whenever there's a disruption happens, we have a resilience. No, because many companies wanted to move from a good to great. Some company some company comes to consultant say, hey, I'm actually bankrupting. I'm actually in a tough situations. Can you actually bring me up? So we call it as a recovery transformation services. And we recover them. We actually bring them, make them sustain, right? That way, it is not only bad time, it is also for a good time. So that way, the resilience part, people have to think through. Somebody might call it as an old wine, a new bottle. It's fine. It's okay. Wine is a wine. So let's actually have it in a new bottle. That's fine. So that's important element is coming along, Professor, right? And quickly the next 30-second level, right? So I know we talked about knowledge management. I think that's very important, and every company should step back and think about a tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge, right? Imagine the tacit knowledge. The company, imagine some people in some company knows how to negotiate. They know, if you have this, if this buyer, then I think our transporter is fantastic, right? So that way, if you have this XYZ, then our contracting excellence will be done. So that way, the tacit and explicit is both are 2 facets. Explicitly, I think capture very well, but how do we capture tacit? How do we imbibe the culture of bringing tacit to cascade it to the entire team is also important. That's where many companies are started capturing the tacit knowledge in an effective way, build the capability, because you talked about culture, right? So it's about how do you kind of do a cross-functional team? How do you do a small team with a collaboration? That is also important. And reward the doers, not the managers. That has also come from a culture point of view. And this all actually, I would put under the knowledge management and do a continuous iteration. So maybe 5 years back, people will say, oh, come on, I actually do a complete traditional model is what? No changes allowed in between, and there is a strong urge to plan everything upfront. I actually would say agile model. Changes are welcome between iterations with a constant feedback. That is very, very important from customer stakeholders and so on and so forth. That's where the agile model has come, right? So that's where this knowledge management of capturing all this is very vital in this current era. With this, I'll probably stop my thoughts. Over to you, Professor. Would love to. I know we have a.
Thanks, so Kainesh for that. And speaking about agile, I'll move to Devrup. And there's also a question for Devrup, which is coming up in terms of how fantastically well your organization has done. But Devrup, in the last discussion, you're talking about operating in a VUCA environment, operating in Industry 4.0, and so operating in such kind of uncertain, complex environment also require very different kind of skill sets for a company like Primus, right? So is there anything which you are doing to develop, that kind of competence or that kind of knowledge management, which will help you to be specialist in managing VUCAs or uncertain, and how would that, is your company trying to build that kind of competence? And if so, how? I mean, if you can give us some insight into that.
So that's a great question. So I'll put it in two different ways. One is, as an organization or as a new organization, what are the things that we are doing or we can do in a VUCA environment? And second is, what are the skill sets or what are the things that people in the organization or organization as a whole we need to build or develop? So I would say, as an organization, what we are doing and trying to do is, A, to be core to our expertise. A new organization cannot and should not be trying to say that, look, we can do everything. Today is the world of expertise. You have to be good at certain things, and we are good at certain things. So restrict oneself to that and focus on things that you have done over a period of time. Consulting, fortunately, is a knowledge industry, and the knowledge to a great extent resides in people. The relationship with your clients reside in people. So what we are doing as an organization in this environment is focusing on what is core to us, focusing on our areas of strength and expertise, and going to client around that, which can be specific industries that we are working on. And second is, as I had also mentioned earlier, is focusing on an end-to-end approach with a digital or a platform that is, or a solution that is required. Because clients today want an end-to-end focused approach towards their problem. You cannot go to a client and say, look, I can do only this much, for the others, someone else has to come in. Or I belong to this part of the organization and my practice does this, for the rest, probably you'll have to talk to someone else. Clients today want an end-to-end solution. So focusing on that aspect, which also brings in solution, digital, and platforms to be able to succeed. As skill sets in new age consulting and new age firms, skill sets that we look in people, one thing which we focus on and which we believe is important is diversity of background. When I joined consulting long time back, consulting had a large number of engineers, MBAs, and CAs. The consulting world, I think at that point of time, 90–95% or maybe even more would be these three set of peoples. Today, if you have to look at a client problem and if you have to look at a client situation, you need people with these backgrounds, yes, but you would also need someone with a statistics background, data modeling background. You would need someone with a legal and regulatory background, because one of the panel members spoke about challenges in regulatory aspects, environments. So you need a whole diverse set of individuals, and diversity, not just from a gender perspective, that is important, also from a background and education and their experience perspective. So as an organization and as a newer organization, smaller organization, that's a focus when we look at people and then when we look at skill set. Another important skill set which is there is around digital and technology, and that's something which is important. And thirdly, one important skill set which is not really linked to any particular area is to be agile and to realize that things that we talk today, or the industry how it is today, is going to be very different 5 years down the line. So someone who has to learn, relearn, has a bent of mind which is focused on adapting to different environments, different scenarios, and keep on learning on a continuous basis. So that's a mindset. That's something which we focus on, and we emphasis on all our people, that look, what you learned as part of your education is good. What you're learning right now is also good. The work that you're doing is good. But remember, the world is going to be disrupted. The world is going to be very different 10 years down the line. You cannot say that, look, this is something which was not taught to me, or this is not how the industry was when I entered. It will change, and you have to keep pace with that. So these, I would say, are important, and this is what we look for in terms of skill sets, in terms of people, etc. Back to you, Professor.
Thank you, Devrup, for suggesting as to what kind of skill sets would be required by the companies for new age company in uncertain and complex environment. Vasant, I'll come to you, with this question, because GEP is also into procurement consulting, and I think you've also been associated with procurement for quite some time. So, Dr. Ganesh earlier talked about how customers' behavior is changing, which in a way means that the procurement and the supply chains also change, right? So do you see a new sort of business models emerging in the space, or do you see the procurement practice of consulting would undergo a lot of changes in future, and what sort of changes do you foresee? You could throw some light on that.
Perfect. Professor Manish, I think, again, for almost all our consultants, this is a very important topic, I would say. Like, how would we see things changing? Obviously, we cannot foresee how or what will be there, say, 10 years down the lane. But at a very broad level, when we kind of look at it, at least in the procurement world, what I tell people is, you will see the key metrics. Again, each company has a different level of maturity, so we cannot have like one specific way within across the industry. But every company, the key procurement metrics will improve almost by 25% in about 25 months. Like the metrics themselves will fundamentally change. The speed at which we are adapting ourselves to the new ways of working. So most of these companies will start changing the fundamental ways of working. That's number one. The second piece is how the consumer demand and how the consumer patterns have changed with the 10-minute deliveries, which we were seeing, right? In India, it's again a big thing. There is again a lot of pressure on the supply chains and obviously on the procurement world. How quickly are we able to make sure that the deals with the FMCGs, with the pharma companies, so on and so forth, are cut out? How well are we able to negotiate? How well are they able to place the products in the shelves? Again, that's a very big thing with the online models. Again, that adds a lot of pressure apart from the offline models. So when we talk about the people aspect of it, that's the skill set piece of it. Over the past 10, 15 years, the procurement professional, so to say, was more focused around negotiating, trying to get things out of there, like understanding the strategy, developing a strategy, and then negotiating, running these RFPs, so on and so forth. Now we are seeing a lot of these autonomous sourcing, so to say, right? The should cost models kind of throw in what could be the price, what should be the price of a particular item, product, so on and so forth. The procurement professionals will now be equipped with a lot more data out there to be able to make certain decisions, right? And in some cases, maybe the procurement professionals will not even go all the way to the supplier. The orders will get placed. There are these bots which have these negotiations with the suppliers. A certain price band is there. You come back, provide the final price to me, and then I go and place the order, so on and so forth. The autonomous sourcing will start taking up a big piece. And then a lot of the procurement people, there'll be like, I think we already spoke about it. Sudipta was talking about it, that concept of singularity, right? Where we start seeing a lot of these functions kind of merging together, right? Procurement, supply chain, business functions, the skill sets of people will start fundamentally merging together. So people will start elevating themselves from the erstwhile procurement skills in the past to maybe more business skills, more functional skills as we get into the future. Technology will play a very big role as we are all speaking, and this will start enabling all these changes as we get into it. So I'll pause there, Manish.
Thank you, Vasant. I think Dr. Ganesh, I'm not sure whether he takes wine or not, but he was speaking about wine. From his forehead, it looks like that he doesn't take wine. But if you are in habit of drinking, it takes some time for it to kick in. So that was the same thing for our discussions as well. It was taking some time to kick in, but now the organizers have told me very clearly it has to end by 6:30. So what I'll do is I'll open up panel for some question and answers for the audience. Maybe you can ask 2-3 questions and then we can wrap up. But thank you, gentlemen and the lady. Sorry, I should have said lady and the gentleman, but apologies for that. Quick questions from the audience to our panelists.
So those of you who have the questions, kindly raise your hands. We'll be asking questions one by one.
Shaka, please go ahead with your question.
Good evening, Sudipta sir. So my question is that, like, typically, what is the strategy to get deeper into an account? That is, to move from an hourly billing model to more of a value-based or say outcome-driven model?
Okay, so I think, great question. I think it's very, very important for every consulting house to think in that terms. But I would say that, one of our esteemed panelists talked about the depth of relationship, and that relationship comes from credibility. So before even you think that, I think starting to build credibility, starting to understand what the client is looking for is one. Secondly, the impact and the outcomes you deliver. How do you go ahead and, even before it is done, how do you really go ahead and propose the measurability model around that? That's very, very, very important. And I think that's how you really go deep and you go wide. So you bring your expertise, you work on your relationships with the client and the account. You then look at what is really the impact and outcome they're expecting, and how do you provide them a foresight around that. That is, I would say, how you can achieve that. But fundamentally, if that value and that impact, the measurability of that impact is not part of it, you cannot really, do that very well. Also, I think sometimes when a client has a problem statement, break it up, atomize the problem, and then start looking at solutions a bit by bit. It's never a one big bang solution for them, and that helps you establish yourself right in the play. I hope I answered your question well.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, Riti, please go ahead with your question. You have one more question. We have one more question from Riti.
Hello, it was a great session for us. My question is for Nilakshi ma'am. What are the shortcomings of today's consulting market in terms of implementation of solutions, and how it can be handled effectively? If you can please help us in this context.
Sure, thank you. It's definitely a very relevant question, given the different stages of journeys that organizations need to go through, right? So that is really the crux, to be able to understand the relevance of what your question is to the awareness and readiness for the organization to go through that understanding itself. We need to be able to assess the levels of maturity across the organization in terms of where is it, because not all layers of the organization are at the same baseline. So understanding the baseline of awareness, acceptance of the kind of digitization that they're looking for will be at different levels. So it is important to first assess that and then breaking that problem statement differently based on the level of readiness and the acceptance of the organization is important. And then you form teams to build cohorts to address it at that level. So there will be problem. To give you an example, there is a group, there will be different backgrounds and diversity in that group for whom you're going to solve that digital problem together. But the acceptance awareness will be different. So there will be someone who will need knowledge of just being at a digital literacy level. There will be someone who understands the problem statement very well, but needs to know where the technology landscape is going in terms of addressing that problem for where they are. Or it could just be a change management, my mindset. It could be just a mindset thing. Because I might be as a customer at a struggling at this particular innovation or problem that my company is looking to solve through these guys. Does that mean my job is at risk? Or does that mean I am not good enough? Or does that mean that someone else is going to replace what I am going to do? Or something else is going to replace what I'm going to do? And those are very basic levels of understanding that one needs to traverse in your problem-solving journey as a consultant. And then build your solutioning accordingly. Again, positioning yourself slowly through this journey as a trusted advisor to break those barriers is very, very important. And then, you just build a solution around it in that journey. I hope I answered your question sufficiently enough. Like Sir said, these are very long conversations, and it takes at least 2 hours to just get to that level of being able to, comfortingly solve each other's questions.
Yes, that answers my question. I got some idea about it. Thank you, ma'am.
Professor, apologies. I need to go for a client call. I'm really sorry.
Yes, thank you so much. Please, we sort of thank you for taking all the time on Sunday evening. So thanks.
And this is also part of a consulting. You have a Sunday snack with the client CXO, so it has to happen. So all the very best for the future consultants. So, and I'm looking forward. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, thanks for this great opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you. So we'll take one last question from Arvind, then we'll close it. Yeah, Arvind, please go ahead.
Hello. Good evening, sir. Can you hear me, Professor?
Yes. Please go ahead, Arvind.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for being available on a Sunday evening, and thank you, Professor, for hosting this session. So my question is, I think anybody from the panel can take that up, or maybe everybody can give a view. So basically, it's about the need for specializing and what we have known a consultant to be more of a generalist, right? So even throughout the 2 days of FULCRUM, yesterday and today, what I could understand is that there is a need to move towards specialization where you get in-depth knowledge about whatever domain you're in. But then I somehow felt that somewhere I got a conflicting message that, yeah, you still need to be a generalist where you should be able to address a lot of problems. So I know a lot of things operate in the gray. So can anyone throw some light on like where we should be looking at? Because obviously, yes, at the stage of our career, we need to gain more expertise, yes, but then does it change as we grow further, as our career takes more responsible roles? So I just wanted some clarity on that. So anybody can pick it up.
So probably I'll take a stab at that. I think when you start off and in the initial days of consulting, be fungible work across different areas, different domains or different industry. But as you move on and as you become senior and senior enough, you have to specialize in a certain area, which can be a solution, which can be an industry vertical, but you have to be known for something. There has to be something that clients want to talk to Arvind about. But having said that, there are certain generic skill sets which are common across consulting, and which, like, for example, you would be able to identify problems. You have to have that bent of mind to be able to see what is the problem, what is the discussion about. You may not be the right person to answer it, and you'll have to bring the larger firm and the larger organization into play. So being able, having that inquisitive mindset of identifying a problem. Consulting is all about logical problem solving. So having a mindset or having a bent of mind which allows you to go step by step in a problem solving and analytical mindset. Now, these are certain skill sets. Then people skills. Consulting is all about people skills. You will be working with clients, you would be working with you would be working with your teams. In larger firm, you will be working across teams in different geographies. Clients, you might be talking to a client who might have spent 30 years in that industry. And I think Nilakshi spoke about that you would be speaking with very senior people, and you have to earn your place on the table over there. So these are certain things which are generic, which has been there and would always be there, which you need to have as a skill set in consulting. And apart from that, there has to be very specific expertise that you bring on table over a period of time. So I'll stop here.
Maybe I'll just add great points there, Group. The way I look at it is, I think, see, a good consultant is often made by clients who are happy about what we do. With that as the basic principle, I think remember the T. So which is, you have to be very convincing to yourself first, and then to the client about your core competencies, your skills in one particular area. They will say that. And you start being very fungible and go deeper, deeper, deeper. So you should be able to make a choice in your career sometime. The other part is the horizontal, which is being very conversant about what's going on, because skills are changing every day. Client expectations are changing every day. You work on a strategy, to my earlier example, to handle chip shortage when maybe competition comes out with something totally different, and that is not a problem anymore, even while you're trying to solve it. So being very conversant is important. So that's the breadth and the depth. To us as individuals, I think, and that's how I look at it, that we really have to be very deep in a domain, and that could be anything. It could be supply chain, it could be a business domain, it could be a technology domain, it could be a data domain. Many things are evolving. And then being conversant about everything and how I can combine my very convincing skill set with my by being conversant across multiple dimensions. So I can combine, let's say, how blockchain technologies can work in defining a cold chain in a business, right? So that's where I think we can really make an impact as good consultants. I'll please turn it over back to my other panelists also to add.
I'll just address the last part of your question, because most of it was very adequately answered by the other panelists so far. Change is something that you need to be prepared more from your mindset perspective, because that is, we've heard more and more about it, and it's a fairly discussed and analyzed topic. So be the change you want to see in yourself at all points in time, and just have a definition to yourself. Be that identifier, be that go-to person for that particular area you want to be known for and you feel strongly about. And rest of the things will automatically follow, and people will listen to you when it's, when all of this combines. So expecting that change will not happen will obviously is not a good starting point, according to me. That is inevitable. That is what we've all been part of throughout our lives, personally and professionally. So just be that change you want to see, and it will happen in terms of being a good consultant with all other cadences that the rest of the panelists have already spoken of.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. And because of certain limitations of the time and our next speaker being already joining the meeting, I would now request Shrestha to give a vote of thanks to the panel and our moderator.
I feel intrigued to propose a vote of thanks to the esteemed panelists. I would like to thank Ms. Nilakshi Kotnis, Mr. Vasan Mugda, Mr. Sudipto Ray, and Mr. Devrup Dhar, and our Professor Manish Thakur with your presence and for inspiring all of us. We have learned how important it is to understand strategy implementation towards Web 3.0 world. We learned about how supply chain is changing. There has been new shopping methods with a 90% change, with high expectations focusing on intelligent automation and resilience and transparency. Also, we understood that today clients don't want only strategy, but they only want to talk to you if you are a specialist. How defining a problem is vital. Also, we've understood that consultants are challenged by clients, wherein clients look for validation with the help of consultants, and that is through technology and strategic approaches. All of this indeed stimulates the thought process of the students. Words are not enough to thank the whole panelists, and thank you so much for your guidance and support to shape today's conference. I, on behalf of Kautilya Consulting Club, convey deep regards and hearty thanks to all of you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us all the opportunity. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone, and best wishes to all the students for your careers.
Good morning, sir. We rarely have the opportunities to host someone who is one and all, a person who is a consultant, a speaker, an author, and who really means it. Today, we have the opportunity to host the rock star of consulting, Mr. Alan Weiss. Mr. Alan Weiss is one of the world's most highly sought consultancy experts. Mr. Weiss' consulting firm, Summit Consulting Group, has attracted clients such as Merck, Hewlett, Packard, GE, Mercedes-Benz, State Street Corporation, Times Mirror Group, the Federal Reserve, the New York Times Corporation, Toyota, and over 500 other leading organizations. Mr. Weiss has served on the boards of directors of the Trinity Repertory Company, a Tony Award-winning New England Regional Theatre Festival Ballet. He has chaired the Newport International Film Festival, and he has given president of the Board of Directors and Festival Ballet Providence. He has also been a visiting faculty member at Case Western Reserve University of Boston College, Tufts, St. John's, the University of Illinois, the Institute of Management Studies, and the University of Georgia Graduate School of Business. He has held an appointment as adjunct professor in the Graduate School of Business at the University of Rhode Island, where he taught courses on advanced management and consulting skills to MBA and PhD candidates. He has served on the board of governors of Harvard University's Center for Mental Health and the Media. He is an inductee into the Professional Speaking Hall of Fame and the concurrent recipient of the National Speakers Association Council of Peers Award of Excellence, representing the top 1% of professional speakers in the world. He is a fellow of the Institute of Management Consultants, one of only 2 people in the history holding both of these designations. His prolific publishing includes over 500 articles and 60 books, including his bestseller $1 Million Consulting from McGraw-Hill. Now, in its 30th year of 6th edition, his newest in legacy, life is not about a search for meaning, but the creation of meaning. His books have been on the curricula at Villanova, Temple University, and the Wharton School of Business, and have been translated into 15 languages. His career has taken him to 60 countries and 49 states. Success magazine cited him in an editorial devoted to his work as a worldwide expert in execution education. The New York Post called him one of the most highly regarded independent consultants in America. He is the winner of the prestigious XM Award for Excellence in Audio Presentation. He is the receptionist of the Lifetime Achievement Award of the American Press Institute, the first ever for a non-journalist, and one of only 7 awardees in the 65-year history of association. He holds an annual thought leadership conference which draws world-famous experts as speakers. Welcome to FULCRUM, sir. We are honored to have you with us today.
Well, thank you. I could listen to you forever. That was nice of you. Thank you very much. It's about 8:20 here on the East Coast of the United States, and it's 33 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, but I'm happy to be here virtually. Let me say, first of all, we have limited time together. So on my site, you'll find free text, free audio, free video. I'm not selling anything. It's all for you. alanweiss.com, ALANWEISS.com, and it's free to download. It's yours, free newsletters and so forth. So I've been a consultant for 35 years, and the future of consulting is bright. I've been listening here for the last 15 minutes, and I disagree with some of the things I heard, but I guess you want to hear from diverse sources today. And the first thing I'd like to tell you is stop calling yourself a consultant. Stop calling yourself a coach or a facilitator or a trainer. Call yourself an expert. And experts decide how to disseminate their expertise, how to extend their expertise. It might be by consulting, it might be by coaching, it might be by any number of things. But once you label yourself a coach, you become a commodity. Once you label yourself a consultant, you become a commodity. So think of yourself as an expert and start to develop intellectual property that proves you're an expert. I changed one woman's career when I got her to stop saying she's an expert and started saying she's the expert. Number 2, don't specialize, generalize. If you're an expert, you can apply this to many different industries. People talk about specialize or die. I say generalize and thrive. I have clients in every conceivable industry, from chemicals to air, to transportation, to hospitality, to finance and so forth. As my very kind introducer talked about, I've dealt with some of the largest companies on earth. Now I specialize in teaching consultants how to consult better and coaches how to do better, but as experts. And so you don't want to specialize because then you limit your buyers. And what you and I are engaged in mostly, some of you might be exceptions, are processes. And the processes apply across companies. They apply across businesses. So why limit your buyers? And in line with that, I respectfully disagree that consulting is about some kind of problem solving, methodical problem solving. It's not. Consulting is about improving the client's condition. That's what you and I do. So doctors say, first, do no harm. We can't say that. We're not successful if we do no harm. Nobody will pay us for doing no harm. We're successful only by improving the client's condition. And what do clients need today in terms of their condition improved? They need innovation, not problem solving. Yeah, sometimes you have to solve problems. Most clients are good at solving their own problems. But today it's about providing value and providing value to help people improve their condition, and that's by innovation. You cannot have growth without innovation. And the only way anyone can coast is to coast downhill. GE was mentioned as a client I used to deal with. Look at General Electric today. It used to be one of the model companies, and today it's a disaster. It's split into 3 companies. It still has $65 billion in debt. They didn't innovate. They were managed very poorly. Why didn't Sears Roebuck, once a giant model company, morph, change into Amazon? It didn't. No innovation. They never changed what they did. Focused on making as much money as they could, built on debt and so forth. So what we're about is improving the client's condition in whatever way we can. And I would suggest that once you listen to a prospect, you decide how best to disperse your expertise. And so a simple sequence is this. You have to decide what is your expertise? What is the value you convey? When I dealt with corporations, I simply said, I dramatically improve individual and organizational performance because I wanted to embrace everyone. I mean, you could say, I reduced the closing time and cost of acquisition of sales. Now that's narrowed to the sales area. That's fine if you want to be narrow, but I said I dramatically improve individual and organizational performance. There's only one thing a prospect, a buyer can say about that. How do you do it? And then I'd say, well, I'll tell you what, instead of being theoretical, why don't we talk about where you feel you need to most improve performance, and we'll talk tangibly about that. And, you know, I believe in the 1% solution, which is if you improve by 1% a day in 70 days, you're twice as good. Not enough of my clients do that. But in this case, this might be the 1% for some of you. So when I say, give me an example of an area you'd like to improve performance, now I'm not making a presentation, we're having a conversation. And the key is to have conversations with real buyers. So first you need what your value is. Second, you need to know who your ideal buyer is. And ideal buyers are people who can pay you for your value. They don't need approval. It's virtually never human resources. It's never learning and development. It's people with P&L responsibility, or it's people who had large staff areas, or it's smaller businesses, it's the owner of the business. So what's your value? Who's your ideal buyer? And then have a conversation, don't make a presentation. And as you get used to doing this, you'll find yourself acting as a peer of the buyer. And you have to see yourself as a peer of the buyer, not a subordinate, not an employee. So if you go in as a pair of hands, and this is very typical in the software business, if you go into code or to write code or whatever it is, you're an employee. You're simply an outsider, but you're an employee. But if you go in for your brain, then you're a consultant. Then you're an expert. So understand what it is that you're really expert at, and understand that you can adapt to any times. Today, remote work like this is as valuable as being there in person, and sometimes it's more valuable. I mean, I'm doing this pro bono, so I couldn't fly halfway around the world to you and spend that money and spend all that time and do this pro bono. I just couldn't do it, but I can do it this way, and I'm happy to do it. I just came back from Australia, which is halfway around the world for me, but that was for business, and I had business in Brisbane, so that made sense. But a lot of people, when the pandemic hit, felt that they had to reduce their fees. They felt that because they weren't there in person, they weren't as valuable. But value is value. It doesn't matter how you deliver it. Value is value. People ask me why I write so many books. Why do I put my intellectual property out there for the public to buy for $20 or $25? It's because no one ever learned to ride a bike by reading a book. And so you might agree with what's in there, but you still need me to implement it. And I'll tell you something else about looking at ourselves too methodically. Logic makes people think, but emotion makes them act. You need an emotional connection with the buyer, not an intellectual connection. I mean, that's fine, but you need an emotional connection. Behind every corporate objective is a personal objective. What's in it for me? Logic makes people think, emotion makes them act. And so you need a trusting relationship where people will start to share what's in it for them. And that's extremely important. So if a buyer says, you have to improve my teamwork, the real reason behind that is the buyer's tired of being the referee, sorting out the conflict among teams. He's tired of that. Fine. Then if we appeal to that, this project's worth much more. Now, I know none of you is interested in fees, but I'm going to say something about fees anyway, and that's this. We tend to think that fee follows value. In other words, the more value you provide, the higher your fee could be. Makes sense, right? Except those lines cross. And when you become well enough known, your brand is strong enough, and your name is known, then value follows fee. In other words, you can raise your fee and people will assume the value raises too. People think they get what they pay for. And that's something about this profession that not enough people appreciate. Actually, the higher your fee, if you are at all recognizable or people are talking about you, the more people impute value. And I talked about brand. What is a brand? People think, the academic definition of a brand is it's a uniform representation of quality. Okay, but here's my definition of a brand. A brand is how people think about you when you're not around. And so in your publishing, in your speaking, in your marketing, in whatever you do to get your name out there, to be in the public square, people have to be able to think about you when you're not around, because you won't be there otherwise physically when they need something. So they need to have you on their mind. That's what you have to think about in brand building. So to put this in some perspective, you have value that you can articulate. You find an ideal buyer who can pay for your value, and that's the person or the people to whom you market. And when you do that, then you're using marketing gravity to bring them into your circle. Now, there are 6 really outstanding ways I know to get short-term business. Maybe some of you have more. The most important is referral business. When you make a sale, you make really 3 sales, but 2 of them you often don't cash in on. So there's the original sale, somebody gives you a check. But then there's expansion business where you continue to build in that company. I worked with Merck for 12 years. I worked with Hewlett-Packard for 5 years. And then there's referral business where you're referred to other people who your buyers know. This kind of business, word of mouth, peer-to-peer referral business, is the future of sales in professional services. I call it evangelism, where people sell you on your behalf because it's win-win-win. So people say to you, do you know a good real estate agent? Do you know a good vacation spot? What kind of car should I get? Because they trust your judgment. And you ask them the same thing. What kind of school should I send my kid to, and so forth? Well, that happens with professional services. It's not social media. It's not advertising. And the literature on this for the last 10 years is very, very strong. So we've failed to ask for referrals, and that's the primary source of new business short term. A second is speaking in front of buyers. A third is publishing. What do your buyers read? A fourth is networking, where you're at events where your buyers attend, fundraisers and so forth. A fifth is hosting a special event where you do a Zoom call for 30 minutes or 45 minutes for free on a very important topic. And then a sixth is pro bono work, where you're doing something for a charity, but your potential buyers are on the board or they're donors and so forth. And so no matter whether you're new to the business or you're a veteran of the business, you can engage in these 6 areas for short-term business, but it requires that you know exactly what your value is and exactly who your ideal buyer is. And when you're dealing with buyers or anyone else, you always want to provide them with options. Because if I give you a yes or no, take it or leave it decision, I've got a 50-50 chance. But if I say you have 3 options, then people will say, instead of saying, should I use Alan? They will say, how should I use Alan? What's the best way to use Alan? And this can apply on any basis. So let's say you and I have met and you say, well, I don't know, maybe we should meet again. And I say, that's a good idea. We can meet by Zoom again tomorrow morning, or I can stop by to see you Monday. Or if telephone's better, I can do this. The more you give options, and I prefer 3, because if you get way above that, people sort of get paralyzed. But the more you give options, the more people are deciding how best to go ahead. These are simple techniques that anybody can use. Now, I have no idea what my timing is, so let me ask, should I keep going, or do you want to do questions or what?
So you can keep going. We have time till 7:30. You can keep going.
I can keep going.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. If you take a look at disruption and volatility, which everybody talks about today, disruption and volatility, it should be the name of a law firm, disruption and volatility. What they don't realize is these are offensive weapons. These are not something that you should hide from. Stick your head in the sand. Disruption and volatility will be with us forever. In fact, they have been with us forever. And if you look at things like Federal Express, if you look at Branson when he launched Virgin America, if you look at Dyson, people think Dyson's in the vacuum cleaner business. Dyson's in the airflow business. They make hair dryers. They make hand dryers. They're massive. Their expertise is airflow. But if you look at these kinds of companies, Amazon, Apple, and so forth, they were born out of disruption. Even the original Hewlett-Packard, which came out of their garage, was born from disruption. And you want to create disruption in the marketplace and create volatility in the marketplace. So back in the 90s, I pioneered value-based fees for consultants and for experts. And value-based fees, the book is now in its, I don't know, its third edition, I guess. But now I have the strongest solo consulting brand in the world. And that's because I disrupted this profession, which was charging by the hour, by the day, by the head, by the seat. And I demonstrated that charging by the hour is unethical. Even though McKinsey was doing it and all the big companies were doing it, it's unethical because a client deserves a fast solution, improvement, but a consultant only makes money the longer it takes if you're billing by a time unit. So why not bill based on value? And my entire approach in the last 30 years has been that you base your fees on value. And so you have objectives in a project, which is the improvement the client seeks, but the objectives have to be business outcomes. So the objectives have to be better profit, higher revenues, better market share, less attrition, fewer expenses, and so forth and so on. Business objectives are not, let's align people. Let's create clearer communications. You can align people forever and the business won't improve. So you have to be talking in terms of objectives about business outcomes. Then you have metrics. And metrics are measures of progress. How do we know we're making progress toward the business objectives? Here are the indicators. And then finally, you have value. And the value is, what is the impact of meeting those objectives? So objectives measures values. I call that conceptual agreement. It's in all of my books. And conceptual agreement means before you submit a proposal, the buyer has agreed to what you're going to do. And so 80% or better of my proposals are accepted. And the same for people in my community. Some of the people in my community report over 90% accepted because they have conceptual agreement. And so when you have this kind of agreement with the buyer, things can proceed rather rapidly. And my proposals are 2.5 pages. They're very, very brief because you have this agreement with the buyer. So you go forward this way, and you have to keep in mind that as long as you're focusing on business outcomes, the value part of that can be very specific and can be monetized. Let's take something as simple as profit. You would all agree, I assume, that profit is an important objective, raising profit. And you'd say, well, that's also the value, increased profit. But if I say to you, what's the impact of increased profit? Well, we can pay down debt, we can raise salaries, we can put more in the bonus pool, we can pay back investors, we can expand this, we can avoid that. And so there are 12 or 14 benefits just from increasing profit. We have to make those apparent in our proposal to the client because that creates a far greater return on the investment. So my feeling is that as you look at objectives, measures, and value comes from achieving the objectives, you want to monetize as many of them as you can. Some things you can't monetize. The buyer will have more time at home with family and not spend 80 hours on the job. Fair enough. But most things you can monetize if you ask about it. And when you do that and you come up with hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars of savings or improvements, my feeling is that a 10-to-1 ratio on your fee is great. Nobody gets a 10-to-1 return these days on almost anything. And so if you've got $2 million in improvements or savings, a $200,000 fee is appropriate. If you have $250,000, then a $25,000 fee is appropriate. And of course, you could escalate that on these options I talked about by providing still more value. All of this we control. And one of the problems I've seen with experts is that they tend to give up control themselves. So there's external control. I mean, the tax authorities, the weather, these are external controls. Our clients have policies and procedures, external control. But there's also a great deal of internal control. And so for the tax authorities, you get a good accountant. The weather turns bad, you move what you're doing inside. And with a client, you say, well, you have your policies and I have mine. And so since we're partners, let's reach some equitable agreement. Now, when people ask me, what's the basis for my billing if I'm not using hours and so forth, I don't just say value. What I tell them is this: I provide dramatic returns on your investment for equitable compensation. And that's how partners operate. A dramatic return on your investment in return for equitable compensation. That's how peers treat each other. I'm not an employee, I'm not a subordinate. And language is everything. And remember that 1% I talked about? I'll give you what might be another 1% for some of you. Language controls discussion. Discussion controls relationships, and relationships control business. So everything we do has to rely on strong, determined, clear language. And that way we control the conversation. I'll give you an example. A lot of times a client says to me, a prospect says to me, I have a problem with using you. And the client will say something like this: the client's in California and I'm here in Rhode Island on the East Coast. That's about 3,000 miles. The client will say, you're 3,000 miles away. And I'll say, that's exactly why you need me. Because the only people you're talking to are people in your circle, are people from the West Coast, and you're breathing your own exhaust. You need someone from the outside. Someone will say to me, you don't know our business. That's right, it's exactly why you need me. See, once you say that, there's 2 seconds of stunned silence. Why do you mean that's exactly right? Look, you have experts up and down the halls here in your business. You have auto experts all over the place, but your service is terrible. And I'm an expert in the processes of improving service. And so you have to use language to turn the conversation around. I call it the martial arts of language, because as I understand the martial arts, you take the other person's momentum and use it back against them. So we're not talking about huge capital investment here. We're talking about smarts, and we're talking about confidence. And the reason I've written all these books, for one reason, is, I talked about raising fees, but people, and a lot of you listening to me right now, are over-delivering and undercharging. I would make that bet. Over-delivering, undercharging. And the reason is, you're afraid. You're afraid that you will be seen as an imposter. You're afraid that you don't have the credentials. You're afraid that the client is older than you are, or the client has more experience. The fact is, if you provide value, that's all that most buyers care about. And so it's a self-esteem issue. And, a lot of people go into psychology, which in the United States has a very high suicide rate, because they're trying to work out their own issues. And so they go into psychology to help other people, ostensibly, but to work out their own issues. And a lot of people go into consulting because I don't think they feel up to it. They don't feel expert enough. And so they want these credentials. But you have to understand, I don't care if the buyer is at a huge office. I don't care if the buyer has 200 people working for her or for him. I don't care if their budget's $50 million. You have to act as a peer of the buyer, as an expert who can improve the buyer's condition. You control that. I'll tell you a quick story. I was flying from Boston to San Francisco, which is a 6-hour trip. And I was in first class on a bulkhead. And there was one first class seat left open. It was next to me. And the plane had come from Europe, so it was an overseas plane, and first class was very, very nice. And a very soft-spoken woman sits next to me. And the plane takes off. It's a good trip. We get to San Francisco, and about an hour away, the pilot says, I'm expecting some rough air. Please clean up the cabin now. And so, seats up, tray tables. Well, my footrest won't come up because a blanket is stuck, and my blanket's stuck in there, and it won't move. So I did what a lot of men tend to do. I started hitting all these buttons on the seat like that, and the seat froze. And I said, I have ruined a $400,000 first class seat on United Airlines. But then the guy across the aisle started to laugh. I wasn't hitting my buttons. I was hitting this woman's buttons. And she was going up and down and in and out, and I was just beating her terribly, right? My question to you is, who's pushing your buttons? Are you setting an independent course for yourself? You're listening to the wrong advice. Now, I don't mean to be argumentative. My job is to be a contrarian, to be provocative. I want to give you different views. And so do you really want to specialize? Do you really want to focus on problem solving? Or do you want to think in bigger terms? Because that's what the world needs right now. And what the world needs is innovation and growth. And nobody cares where it comes from as long as they're convinced it's true value. So your job, really, your future, I should say, isn't based so much on how good a consultant or expert you are. I will agree that you're great. It's based on how many buyers you can reach. And to reach as many buyers as you can, you have to use as many of those 6 things I talked about before as you possibly can, so that you're in what I call the public square. You see, if somebody wants a strategist, and in that group of strategists is my name, that's okay. But it's much better if they say, get me Alan Weiss. And what you want is for them to say, get me, and then fill in your name. Okay, where are we? Should I keep going? Questions?
So we can move to the question and answer session. So the students who have a question, they can please raise your hands and we can go ahead with that. And so we absolutely love this session. It was a treat listening to you. I'm sure the aspiring leaders, they have learned a lot from this session. It was a delight to have you here.
Oh, that's very nice of you.
Shaunak, you please go ahead with your question.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, just speak slowly, please. There's a little bit of a echo on my audio for some reason. So if you speak slowly, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. It was an amazing session to be a part of, sir, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. So you mentioned in your talk that, you know, one of the things that, you know, we make mistakes on as consultants is
are you hearing that? Something's not muted.
Yes, sir. We are taking care of it. Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead.
Please continue.
Sorry about that, sir. What I was getting at, sir, is you know, you mentioned one of the things that, you know, many consultants make a mistake on is over delivering and undercharging for their services, and kind of like attorneys, you know, the intellect that we have and the ability that we bring to the table to make our clients run their businesses better is our stock in trade, if you will. So in the interests of, you know, not undervaluing that, but at the same time, trying to make sure that the client understands the same as well. I mean, is there a way that you would go about like decoupling your individual contribution, you know, to the company's performance as a consultant? Because, you know, especially, you know, with the economic times the way they've been, it's more along the lines of where every company is going on about impact, and individual impact versus impact of a team.
Let me stop you there so I can answer, because I want to make sure I answer your key question. First, I'm going to tell you something strategically first and then tactically. And the strategic might be part of this 1% solution. Here it is. Never, ever talk about what you do. Talk about what you create.
Okay.
Okay. Never. And this is for everybody, not just you, obviously. But never talk about that you give a speech or you train or you're an expert in resolving this or that. Talk about how the client's conditions improve. So it's what you create. So that's the strategic. Tactically, you have to build into your language, as I talked about language being so important, examples, social proof of what you've done. So if a client says to you, one of our issues is we have too much turnover here, too much attrition, you say, instead of saying, well, there are 3 ways to cut attrition, you say, you know, I work with a large financial institution that had that same issue. And what we find is that there were 4 things that needed to be looked at. Which of these 4 things are you looking at? Sure. And so you bring in social proof, and then you bring in something specific that they probably hadn't considered before. And that's the value. So that's the strategy, and that's the tactic I would suggest to prove to clients that you're good and that you have unique offerings. And I'll say one more thing, because I know it's on a lot of your minds, because you alluded to it. Everybody will tell you that things are tight and I don't have enough money.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody will say that. And here's my reaction. You do have money. And they'll say, no, things. I said, listen, the lights are on. You're paying salaries. The heat is on. You have money. The question is what you do with it. Now, let me tell you all something, and this is very important. There's a difference between budget and money. People will say, I have no budget. And they're right. Nobody budgets for us who they never heard of or didn't expect to come and has a money set aside. You know, let me set aside $100,000 for a consultant I never heard of. They don't do that. But they have money. And the reason you have to deal with a real buyer is that real buyers can reallocate money. And so what I say to them is, well, you don't have a budget, but you do have money. So take the money from someplace you're not getting the same return and give it to me where you're going to get a much better return. That's the art of language. And that's why language can control the business. All right. I hope that helps.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. Another question?
Next question is from Jeetu. Jeetu, please continue with your question.
Hello, Alan. It was really nice to listen to you. So, question is regarding very different from the strategy part that you have been telling right now.
A little slower, please. Little slower, please. Thank you.
Okay.
You know, people in India speak English better than Americans do, so it's a problem. We don't hear good English all that often.
Okay. So actually, I have my question related to the recent Summit Consulting has been in news recently. So it's regarding the acquisition that Disney has done of the Summit Consulting, being such a great organization, Summit Consulting. What was the strategy that made you to go with this deal with Disney?
What was the strategy that made me go with what? With Summit Consulting Group?
With having the acquisition or Disney making the acquisition of Summit Consulting.
Okay, I'm still. Are you asking me why I created Summit Consulting Group?
No, I'm asking that what made you like have the acceptance of the deal that Disney made to you for acquiring Summit
Hold on,
Consulting?
speak more slowly. What made me have the acceptance, did you say?
Yes.
Of what?
Of what? Of the Disney's deal.
Of the
deal that Disney made to you for the acquisition of Summit Consulting.
I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. This is my fault. But I was fired in 1985. I was president of a consulting firm for about 18 months. I moved up here to where we are, and I was fired because the owner and I hated each other. He believed in something I didn't believe in. And I had a very poor severance, and my kids were in private school and the whole business. And my wife said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to go out on my own because no moron is ever going to fire me again." And she said, "Just get serious," like that. She said, "Just get serious." And I did. And what I did was I called everyone I knew. And I told them I was out on my own, and this was the value I was providing.
Okay.
And I wrote and I spoke because we have to build on strength. You don't improve by correcting weaknesses. You grow by building on strengths. And I can write and I can speak. I can write and I speak. And even today, I'm writing and speaking, right? Those are my strengths. I'm a lousy networker. I can't stand small talk. So somebody will come up at some event and say, "Alan, what do you think about this?" I said, "Excuse me, I really have to go to the restroom." So I go with my strengths. And somebody at Merck called me and said, "Alan, it's good to hear from you after this time, but we could really use a consultant who can you do this?" I said, "Yes." And when anybody asked me if I could do something, my answer was always the same: "Yes, of course." And if I didn't know how to do it, I invented it. I had total confidence. And the only things I didn't touch were finance and technology, because I'm not interested in finance and technology. But anything else I could touch. And since I'm a process guy, once I had a process for this, I could use it anywhere. I hope I'm answering your question. But that's what I did.
Yeah, I really like, it's a little bit near to my question, but my major part of the question was with the deal that recently happened, or your deal, or the Summit Consulting's deal that happened with Disney.
At Disney?
Yes. The Disney acquired Summit Consulting, right?
Nobody acquired Summit Consulting.
So it was in the news and it was on your website as well, or Alan White.
I really don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I've been independent for 30-something years, and I've never even worked for Disney, and no one ever acquired Summit Consulting Group. Now, there was an April Fool's issue. You know, in the United States, we have April Fools, which is when you play jokes on other people. And I did long ago to play with people in my community. I said that Disney had bought my company for millions of dollars, but it was just an April Fool's joke. So if that's what you're thinking about, I need to be more careful in the future.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
It's okay. Not your fault.
Thanks a lot, Alan. Thanks a lot.
That tells us why we should check our facts from multiple places.
Right.
Now I would like to invite Suman for the next question.
Hello, sir. Am I audible? Hello, sir. Am I audible?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, sir. Thank you for this mentally stimulating session. And my question is, when a venture fails, what does it take for an entrepreneur to come out of that failed venture and think of starting a new one.
So what does it take for an entrepreneur to come off one approach and start a new one?
Yes. So if a venture fails, so what are the driving factors that he or she has to take to invest in a new one? So does they have a new strategy or does it take something else?
I have one question. And do you mean to start new things within your business, or do you mean to change the kind of business you're in?
Maybe if they invested in a venture and it failed. So what are the driving factors that drive them to invest in a new venture?
Is the new
Considering
venture
the risks
is the new venture just you, or is it with other people?
with yourself?
Okay, I think I understand. What it takes pragmatically is some financial security. And so you have to have at least 6 months of normal expenses put away, so you're not constantly worried about bills, because that kills you. The second thing is, if you are part of a family, if you're married or your parents are close or whatever, you have to have support of your family. I don't mean financial support, I mean moral support. So finance and relationships are the first things that need to support you in any kind of entrepreneurial journey, because there's always risk involved. Now, after that, you need to get your value and your name in front of as many people as possible. I call this being in the public square. People have to know who you are. I chose to do it when I became contrarian. And I said, when I was fired, it was all about quality. You know, quality teams, quality circles, black belts in quality, all this kind of stuff. And I started to write articles and speak on the fact that quality is actually dysfunctional. That too much quality can kill you. And that we're about success, not perfection. The tolerances were ridiculous. And people hated me, but they read me and they listened to me. And I got a name as the contrarian. And so you have to think about your value and how you will present it in the marketplace so that people remember you, because it's provocative. It's different. It's not the same as everyone else. I mean, you don't want to be the 450,000th person to be talking about, you know, leadership requires commitment. You know, if I wanted to go into strictly the leadership field, I would probably say something like leadership requires compliance, and strong, tough leaders are better than consensus builders. You know, I'd say something that would enrage people somewhat. So let me stop. Am I answering your question?
Yes, sir. So you're saying that you have to ruffle some feathers to get noticed.
Other strategies to get noticed are you can collaborate with people so that you find somebody with whom you do a workshop together. You find somebody with whom to write something together. You know, I've co-authored, I don't know, 6 or 7 of my books are co-authored. You find somebody where they're not competitive with you, and it's a synergy, it's win-win. So you do a guest column for them, they do a guest column for you, they're on your podcast and so forth. You know, and be aware that today, if you want to get noticed, ironically, brevity is the key, because people do not have long attention spans. So every day I have a free video on social media that's a minute with Alan, 1 minute with Alan. Even my long once a month videos are about 8 minutes. So you have to keep things brief. And if you keep them brief, they have to be pithy. They have to hit people right away so people want to know more. I mean, the whole point here is to get people to say, I need to hear more from this person. I don't have enough to work on now, but I have sufficient interest. I need to hear more. That's what we want to accomplish.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Sir, kindly let me know if we have time for more questions, or how should we proceed?
I have 5 more minutes. That's what I was prepared for.
Okay, sir. Next, I would like to ask Surbhit to unmute his mic and ask his question.
Hi, Alan. Good morning. So you mentioned that we need innovation to create value, right? I totally agree on that. And my question based on that is centered around technology, right? New emerging technology is probably an innovation that has the potential to create something of value for the people, right? But whenever a new technology emerges in the market, right, many organizations usually want the first piece of the pie to try the technology and create something for the people to have a competitive edge, right? As a consultant, do you really think that it's really important for big tech firms to be in the race to have the first piece of the pie considering technologies? And what would you recommend to the clients who are in this race? And do you think that to innovate and create something?
Hold on. One thing at a time here.
So sorry.
Okay.
Okay. So first part of the question.
I think what you said was, do I think it's important to have the first piece of pie to be early on the innovation track?
Exactly. Considering new technologies that are emerging in the market, right?
Okay, so let me respond to that. We mentioned Hewlett-Packard before. Hewlett-Packard became very successful by always being the second one into the market. They waited to see what happened with a competitor, and then they built on it. There's a famous story where Steve Jobs, in a rare visit, went up to see Bill Gates at Microsoft. And Bill Gates showed him a tablet they were working on. And Steve Jobs said they'd never do a tablet. And on the plane on the way back, Steve Jobs says to his assistant, get a team together, start putting a tablet together. He said, I thought you never wanted to do a tablet. He said, I didn't, but somebody's got to do it right, and they're not doing it right. So it's okay to be second into the market or even third when you wait and see what others are doing. Right now, Tesla has got this huge lead in electric cars. I'm not convinced they're going to keep it. And so they made a lot of money for Elon Musk, but I don't think Tesla will emerge as the world leader in electric car manufacture by a long shot. I think that if I'm not mistaken, about a year and a half or 2 years ago, Harley-Davidson pulled out of the Indian market. And he is a worldwide brand, probably the biggest brand in motorcycles in the world, but they were too expensive. They were too big for a lot of the streets. And India, the last time I looked, has what, 18% of the world's population? I mean, it's a great, great market, except why didn't Harley-Davidson go into these electric scooters that are all over the cities now, which is another form of street transportation? And so just being first isn't enough. You have to be adaptable, and you have to understand how to improve what's happening. I'll give you one more example right now, which is working beautifully, is telehealth. In the United States, about 10 years ago, maybe 60,000 people used telehealth. Today, it's 20 million. And telehealth will continue to improve as people add. I mean, look at a smartphone. People are continually adding apps to it, right? On the other hand, online learning in the United States is a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. So whoever comes into online learning for schools and improves it is going to make a fortune if they do it right. So in response to your question, you don't have to be first, but you have to make significant improvements and learn from the people who were first as to what's deficient.
So don't you think not being the first does not really have a competitive advantage towards for the firms, organizations?
I don't think not being first is at all a detriment. You know, the biggest rental car company in the world today is Enterprise. And Hertz used to be #1, and Avis was #2 and bragged about it. But Enterprise, which used to provide cars to replace for insurance claims, decided they do what? They deliver cars to homes. They delivered their own car to them, and Enterprise became big. So you don't have to be first, you just have to be better. And you have to keep your consumers' needs in mind. You know, right now, I don't know about in India, but in the United States, they're selling cars. They bring the car to your home, or you sell your car, they just come and take it away, or you can get your car out of a vending machine. It's crazy, but that's the way it's going.
Yeah, we don't have vending machines of cars right now, but yeah, hopefully in the future we'll have. So
if you go to Tokyo, you can buy
I've seen that.
Yeah, you can buy underwear in vending machines. It's bizarre. All right, it's 9 o'clock. I need to go. Anything? I want to thank you for having me here. I want to remind you, alanweiss.com, free audio, video, text. Please help yourself. I want to thank you for your questions and thank you for your attendance.
Thank you, sir, for being here with us. I would like to invite Imran for a vote of thanks from our side.
I feel honored and privileged to get this opportunity to give a vote of thanks on this special occasion. Everyone present at this occasion is in awe of your knowledge. We learned about generalization instead of specialization. We can generalize and fly instead of getting stuck at one place with specialization. There cannot be growth without innovation. Many companies have failed if they have not innovated. We should understand our value and who is our buyer. Never talk about what you do, instead what you create. Language controls conversation, conversation controls relationship, and relationship controls business. So everything rolls down to the language. We should reflect back and see who is controlling our button. All control should be with us only. We appreciate you making time in your busy schedule to provide guidance and knowledge. I, on behalf of Kautalya Consulting Club and XLRI PGDM badge, convey deep regards and hearty thanks to you, sir. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Now we will continue with the closing ceremony. We had a fun last 2 days. We had a lot of fun and we had a lot of knowledgeable sessions. It is rightly said by Swami Vivekananda, we want the education by which character is formed, strength of mind is increased, the intellect is expanded, and by which one can stand on one's own feet. Conclaves like FULCRUM serves as a forum for stimulating discussions for the students who are future consultants. In last 2 days, we had the opportunity to interact with speakers who are the best of the best from the consulting industry. And they have been very generous in sharing their knowledge, insight, and experience with us. They have taken us to avenues related to consulting that we have probably not thought of yet. The event has inspired us to be better problem solvers and helped us in appreciating consulting as art of possibilities.
Day 1 and day 2 of the event had speakers from across the consulting world. Some of the key takeaways that we can take back would be: consulting is like developing a toolkit solving client problems. Consulting is not only advising the client, but they should be part of the value creation and integration. Skill sets of individual should be dynamic and solutions should be differentiated and customized. AI and machine learning to help human and not replace them. The way of consulting has evolved and would keep evolving in the near future. Innovation is the key ahead. This event would not as exciting and interactive without the interest and active participation of the hundreds of the audience from the consulting cohort. Without those questions, this event would not have had the spark it had over the last 2 days. I would also like to thank our professors, moderators, student committees, and the IT team who have lent their guidance and helping hand in planning logistics to make this event possible. On behalf of Kautalya Consulting Club and the entire cohort of PGDM GM batch to 2022-23, I would like to thank you all for making FULCRUM a grand success. Thank you everyone for your time